Good afternoon, everyone. Calling to order the Committee on Education. Today is Friday, January 23rd. It is 1:03 p.m. Conference room 229. Today, I would like to also, being this is our very first meeting of the year of the committee by itself, introduce my members. To my left is Vice Chair Senator Kidani, and to her left is Senator Fukunaga. To my right is Senator Hashimoto and Senator DeCourt. So we're all here, all 5 members of the committee. So today's informational briefing is about accountability at the Hawaii Department of Education in light of 2 recent state auditor reports, one on classroom heat abatement and the other on driver's education program. On heat abatement, the legislature approved $100 million to cool 1,000 public classrooms in 2016. These investments were made because excessive heat directly affects student health, learning, and teacher retention. The auditor's report raises serious concerns about planning, execution, and whether those funds are translating into timely relief for students and educators. The driver's education audit similarly identifies gaps in access, oversight, and program delivery. Despite continued legislative funding, for many students, especially in rural and underserved areas, driver education is essential and not optional. When programs fall short, students lose opportunities and public dollars are not used as intended. In both cases, the legislature did its part. We provided the funding. The audits call into question whether the department has the management systems and accountability measures in place to deliver results consistent with the legislative intent. So this briefing is not just about reviewing the audits. We expect clear answers on how much funding has been spent, what outcomes have been achieved, where delays occurred, and what corrective actions are underway. So going forward, we expect a written corrective action plan, clear timelines, measurable benchmarks, and regular reporting to the legislature. When public funds are appropriated, especially at this scale, we do expect transparency, accountability, and results. And more importantly, we expect our students to benefit from this. And so for our first audit, we will be taking up Audit 25-06, Department of Education and Department of Transportation Administration of Driver Education Programs, and calling on the auditor's office to give us an overview of the audits, and then we will have responders from the appropriate departments come up. Okay, Les.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hosting this briefing. We like these briefings about our reports. My name is Les Kondo. I'm the state auditor. We issued this report about driver education in April of last year, 2025. We started this audit because of a concurrent resolution that requested us to audit both the Department of Education and the Department of Transportation's driver education program. Specifically, it asked us to look at whether the Department of Education was providing driver education in its public schools, what they were doing to address the backlog. It also asks us to look more broadly at both programs, their procedures, their policies. I think maybe Senator Hashimoto was one of the introducers of this resolution, so we appreciate the ask, and we enjoy doing this report. Driver education in Department of Education and Department of Transportation, those programs, they are separate, distinct programs. They are not one program. They each have their own separate, distinct program. And because of that, it's really 2 separate audits. So I'm going to talk first about Department of Education's driver education program, and perhaps maybe we'll take a second or 2 and talk to the Department of Education, and I can come back and talk about the Department of Transportation's program that relates to driver education. So first about the Department of Education, a little background about DOE and their driver education program. Driver education in Department of Education schools, it was created by the legislature in 1966, 60 years ago. And this is the language from the from that act, Act 42 in 1966, and it identified, the legislature at that time, it identified this problem that these motor vehicle accidents were causing deaths and injuries. And just kind of a side note for Director Sniffen, according to the act that year, there were in 1965, the year before the act, 105 people died on our roads, and 8,300 people were injured in motor vehicle accidents in 1965. Of course not.
See, it wasn't even born.
So, Senator, you were not one of the people driving on the roads in those days. Some of us may have been. No, not really. Anyway, sorry, but
I was, yeah. Thank God.
the legislature directed the department to create a driver education and training program in its public high schools after hours, on Saturdays, and during summer recess. And in explaining the purpose of the program, the legislature did cite the grave problems created by high motor vehicle accident and death rates. And it deemed this program to be a matter of urgency, that the department provide this instruction to minors as a solution to protect and preserve health, safety, and welfare of the public. In 1999, the legislature made completion of a formal driver education program mandatory to get a driver's license for drivers under the age of 18. So this will age some of us because some of us, me being one, never took formal driver education class. 1999, that's when it became a requirement. That started, bill passed in 1999, effective in 2001. In 2005, the legislature passed another law that required graduated driver licensing requirements. In other words, there were 3 steps to becoming a licensed driver in the state of Hawaii, starting in 2005. But the law today, it still, in essence, mirrors the law that was enacted by the legislature in 1966. It's been now codified or recodified as Section 302A 413, which is on the screen right here. And it directs the department, or actually I take that back, it says the department may authorize or establish a driver education program. It also says that the department, for purposes of this section, shall do certain things. Those things being that they must set priorities and prerequisites, they must establish and employ the necessary requirements for and employ the necessary instructors, and they are going to issue or required to issue a certificate of completion of the course upon successful completion by the students. I got to note that this statute, this is the only statute, I take it back, there's another statute I'm going to show you in a second, but this is the only statute really that defines this program, that sets up the structure of this program. There's no other more detailed provisions in the law about how the Department of Education is supposed to deliver driver education. The department also may implement or adopt administrative rules, specifically in 302A 413, and it's a really important provision. I'm going to come back and talk about administrative rules in a little bit. The other provision in the statute, the only other provision that relates to driver education in the Department of Education schools is this provision, and this provision says that the Department of Education will hold classes, will certify their own instructors. They'll have courses to certify their own instructors. This is an important provision. I'm going to come back and talk about it later on when we talk about the Department of Transportation's administration of their program. But this is something that is important for the Department of Education and something that the Department of Education was not able to do when the Department of Transportation had taken over or when they were administering their program. So I'll talk about this in a second. So what did we find? We basically found in a nutshell that the Department of Education did not complete the program structure for driver education in its schools. The legislature created some broad general framework, and it directed the Department of Education to complete that framework, the structure of the program, through administrative rules. And the department did not. What we found instead is the department had offered driver education in 35 of its 68 high schools. The 68 high schools includes 21 public charter schools, and of the 35 schools where driver education was offered, 3 of them were in public charter schools. So in total, 35 out of 68 public high schools offered driver education when we performed this audit. And that would have probably been around the timeframe being late 2024, early 2025. So what we also found is we found the department had not promulgated rules as they were required by law to do. Those necessary details to complete the program, that's what's missing from this program. It had not established the prerequisites and priorities that the law directed them to do. It had stopped providing training for its own instructors. And like I said earlier, that's at the direction, I think, of the Department of Transportation. We'll talk about that in a second. The department also didn't have any policies and procedures to guide how driver education was going to be administered in its schools. Instead of a program, it was treated just like any other after-school extracurricular activity. But the legislature determined that it was the state policy that driver education was going to be a department program. There's a very big difference between that policy directive and just any other extracurricular activity after school, like robotics or debate. So as a result, what we found that there was no uniform manner in which driver education was offered at Department of Education high schools. 35 schools offered instruction, in essence, the way that they wanted to, 35 different ways. School principals, the school's driver education coordinators, they really had control over whether the school was going to offer driver education and then how they were going to offer it. And what I mean by how, that means how they were going to, in essence, advertise so that students or people who were under the age of 19 could apply. And I forgot something. The law requires driver education to be available to residents of the state of Hawaii who are age 15 and under the age of 19, regardless of whether they attend that particular high school, whether they attend private school, whether they've graduated already, or whether they've just dropped out from school, or maybe they're homeschooled. But the law requires driver education to be available equally to students or residents who are 15 and under 19, between that age period. So what we found is the schools, the principals, the coordinators, they were deciding how they were going to advertise that people could apply for driver education, how that application process worked, who got into the courses, how if wait lists were maintained at all, what the purpose was, and how those were administered. All of that was decided by the schools and the school principals and the driver education coordinators at the school. It was not a centralized, uniform, consistent process as you'd expect with a program that the Department of Education was supposed to create. It's that lack of structure. It really created an opportunity, which we'll talk about, where it was every man for themselves, kind of the wild, wild west. And we see examples where there was favoritism, where there was unfair treatment for people, students, residents, kids, teenagers who wanted to take driver education. That opportunity was not available to them because of this lack of structure, lack of policy, lack of what we would call controls, where management could ensure that the program was operating the way that they intended and have some supervisory oversight to make sure that it was being operated the way that they intended. What we did see, what we did is it was very difficult for us to locate driver education information on the school websites. How is a student or a resident supposed to understand what opportunities are available for them? So we looked at many school websites and we found that there were different approaches to advertising driver education. Some didn't have any information about driver education. We did find a number of schools were using Google Forms for the application. Handful of them, not all of them, but the forms were different. Some of them required certain information, others required other information. One form required students to provide their permit number. One school required them to indicate where they went to school, and it only listed a handful of schools, the schools within that district or near that district. Other schools required other information on their Google form document, their application. It was different. It wasn't standardized. It wasn't one size or one way. It was done differently. But we also found that some schools, like Waipahu as an example, many schools, they didn't use an electronic online system. They required paper forms. Here's an example, and it's from the Waipahu newsletter. You'd have to find the newsletter to be able to find this information. I'm not sure how widely disseminated that newsletter is, but it says that you need to pick up the packet in this room. Stop by P36 to pick up an application. Here's another example. Roosevelt High School. Students must turn in a hard copy of their application. Another example from Kalani. Here's the hard copy application that needs to be filled out and turned in. This is a good example too. This is Kailua High School. Paper form that we could access through their website. The problem is when we looked at this and we found this in late 2024, Kailua High School had stopped offering driver education in 2022. They had the application still up, no information about the fact that driver education was no longer offered at the school. It was something that a student might be able to access, fill out, and then turn in, but they're not offering driver education at that school. We did see some schools, sorry. So what we did find, because of this lack of structure, is often how you get in is who you know. And we have a little text box here, which is this slide. We did a little text box about a situation at Radford High School where some Punahou students were allowed to take driver education during the school day. So that's a 4-credit course, a little different than the extracurricular after-school courses that we primarily looked at here. We looked at this one and we highlight this one just because by DOE rule, only students registered at the school are supposed to be allowed to take 4-credit courses during the school day at the school. These students, initially the allegation was 10. We ended up finding that we ended up talking about the Department of Education's investigation or Department of Transportation's investigation. They only identified 2 students. The students were Punahou students, and there was some relationship to faculty at the school. The students had a relationship with faculty at Radford High School. So actually,
They be able to take the class during the school day. They're not at school at home.
right, they're not supposed to. So that, I think, I'm sorry, that was my point, is that without any kind of structure, any kind of oversight, these kind of favoritism issues, it certainly arose.
School at Punahou?
Don't know. Our scope is very limited, Senator. Maybe the superintendent can answer that question. Just kidding. Anyway, so this who you know thing, we suspect it's probably more than just this incident, because when we talk to other driver education coordinators, how do you select people for the class? One person told us, well, I asked the teammates of my son's football team whether they're interested. So there's other ways that people would be able to get enrolled in a driver education class that is really not fair. It's not transparent. It's not equal access to all. So that's the point that we're making here, that with a program, without that structure, every school was doing it their own way. And the result of that was inequity, was unequal treatment, was sometimes favoritism, not the way a program really should be operated. So one school, Castle, they did have a wait list. So online, something that you fill out, not every school maintained a wait list. Required by DOE rules or policy to have a wait list at every school. So without a wait list, the department cannot understand the demand. And that was, I think, one of the senator's concerns about what is the demand for driver education. How can the Department of Education perhaps meet that demand? Kind of it as a side, Department of Education charges $10 a student to enroll and participate in Department of Education driver education instruction. If you're not able to take that instruction and you have to go to take driver education in the private sector, the cost is about $550.
So that $10, was that the initial amount in 60 years ago?
I believe so, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't think the amount has changed. I'm not sure. Maybe the department can answer that question better than I can about how long it's been $10. But the difference between the 10 and the 550, it's significant. But without a wait list, it's very difficult to gauge demand. Some wait lists maintained by coordinators in their head, not on paper, not some kind of record that somebody could see, not some way that somebody else could determine whether or not they were going down the wait list if there's openings or maybe for future years. One coordinator told us that people sign up when they're freshmen, but she takes the seniors. So in other words, the freshmen eventually may get into the class, but they're going to have to wait a few years before they're able to enroll in the class. She felt that it was more appropriate, better for her to service the people that were older and not necessarily the people that were younger. That's not a department policy. That's certainly not in the statute. Without that structure in the rules, she just made a decision about how she was going to select students to be part of the class. So I wanted to talk quickly about the significance of the program. I keep talking about program. I know initially the department questioned what a program was. They didn't think they needed to establish a program because the language of the laws may establish and administer a program, not mandatory. So the department suggested that they did not have to create a program. They suggested, and we do not say this, that they don't have to have a program in every school. I agree with that. The law doesn't require them to have driver education in every school. And we did not suggest that. So I hope that got clarified or cleared up with the department. But there's a significance when the legislature decides as state policy that driver education is going to be a program. That's state policy. It's not an extracurricular activity, like I mentioned, drama, robotics, where perhaps the principal or the department decides they want to offer this type of instruction. This is state policy. State policy requires consistency, requires structure. So the importance of this is that there needs to be a program. Started in 1966, continued through Section 302A, 413 today.
Can you summarize?
Surely.
What was the response from the department?
Okay. And what's important is the rules. That's how you develop the structure. They got the authority to implement rules. They need to do that. We have a little thing about rules here. You guys probably are familiar with rules. We tried to educate the department and other readers of our report about what administrative rules are and why they're required by law. Required by law. So one difference is perhaps it may be discretionary from the department's perspective, but once you do certain things and you affect the rights of people that use your program, it's required by law to have administrative rules. These are our recommendations. We included many recommendations in every report. I got to talk to you real quick because I looked real quick yesterday or the day before about what the Department of Education has done. They actually have a new website. And this is one of the pages. They actually have other information on that website. And one of the things that they've added, hopefully across the board, consistent through all their programs, is they put prerequisites and priorities for people to enroll in their classes at different schools. One of that is you got to live in the district. So I was surprised.
So you didn't have this website when you were doing?
Oh, no, it's new. I hope it's in response to the audit. We always want agencies to improve and to do things better, to address the problems that we've identified. So I was surprised, happily surprised. But at the end of the day, it's not a rule. And they still need to put all this stuff in administrative rules. The significance of that is it cannot be changed at the whim of a new administrator or a new superintendent. There's a process. It's transparent. People get a chance to offer public testimony on those rules. So that's the significance of why it needs to be in a rule. This is where our report is in case anyone here, maybe people that are watching are interested. And well, that's it. So anyway, sorry I rushed through the end, but thank you for the opportunity to talk about our report.
So members, we can ask questions of the auditor. We can bring up DOE. Sure, you can have questions for the auditor. That's
So Les, I think thanks for that great presentation. I think good overview. I think what you told us heavily on the DOE side. I don't know if you're gonna talk about the DOT side.
We have the DOT side and a separate.
Okay, we're gonna do that after.
yeah.
Okay.
That now.
Okay.
To both. What do you guys prefer?
Maybe a quick D on the DOT side and then
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, the DOT program is, like I mentioned earlier, it is a different, separate, distinct program from DOE. They have their own responsibilities, different from what DOE's responsibilities are. DOE's responsibilities, its program, it started much more recently than DOE's program, right? It started in, I think the year is 1999 is when the legislature established through statute the Department of Transportation's program. Again, it allowed them, authorized them to promulgate administrative rules. Unlike DOE, DOT has adopted administrative rules. They did it 6 years later, but they have administrative rules that provide structure to their program. Defines their responsibilities like it's supposed to do, defines the rights of people that use the program. So DOT really has two responsibilities, just two. Certify the curriculum that's going to be used to train people who are called master trainers or train the trainers, people that train the driver instructors. certify the curriculum for the driver education instructors that teach the students, and certify the curriculum that will be taught to the students. That's one of their responsibilities. The other responsibility is to certify driver education instructors. Really, I would call it license the instructors. And I would suggest that second responsibility is somewhat ministerial. The statute or the rules provide what an instructor needs to provide, amongst other things, driver abstract, copy of their driver's license. They can't have moving violations within the last year, no drug or alcohol-related incidents relating to driving under the influence within the last 5 years, things like that. They need to show proof of that. Once they show proof of that, in my opinion, what the rule says is that the Department of Transportation shall issue the driver instructor the certificate or the license. So what we found is the department is doing things very differently. So in a nutshell, what we found is the Department of Transportation allowed a relatively low-level employee to run rampant, without adequate supervision, to run the program as she wanted to, whether authorized by law or not. That's what we found in a nutshell. So the director did not certify any curriculum. And the director, by the rules, he is supposed to convene a committee task force, curriculum task force, to review the curriculum and provide him recommendations. He eventually is supposed to certify that curriculum, which is a fundamental part of the entire program. Without that certified curriculum, hard to issue certificates of completion of curriculum or a program without the curriculum being first certified. So anyway, I want to talk a little real quickly about what we found the highway safety specialist, the relatively low-level employee, what she did, how she greatly expanded her authority under the statute, DOT's authority. She approved curriculum. The director did not certify curriculum. He did not delegate that responsibility down to the highway safety specialist. She just took it on herself to decide what curriculum was appropriate, right? She substituted her decision as to what she thought was appropriate. And we would question whether that's really appropriate. She certified master trainers. Master trainers are the trainer people. The law or the rules do not provide for certification of master trainers. Department of Transportation's sole responsibility with respect to master trainers is to certify the curriculum that they must pass successfully to be a master trainer. She certified it. She certified 3 people, 3 that had relationships or she had relationships to them. The first one that she certified was based upon this training course that they went to. She and the person who she eventually certified went to this training course. I think it's in Western Washington University. And the PowerPoint presentation really is very enlightening. It says specifically, this is not that course. This course is not to train or to help people become trainers of other instructors. Yet it was based on this course that she certified that person to be a master trainer. And the thing about certifying or limiting who would become a master trainer is because those people eventually would train people that wanted to be driver education instructors at a cost, not free, not part of the Department of Transportation's program where they would provide this for free. They would be private citizens, private individuals who would be able to charge people who wanted to become an instructor. And it's just not DOE instructors, it's also private driving school instructors. These requirements apply to private driving school instructors just as well as DOE driver education instructors. Another comment. And this is about the lack of any kind of oversight by the Department of Transportation as to what this person was doing. This person was allowing the master trainers to use the Department of Transportation seal and the state of Hawaii seal on their information that they were pushing out, advertising for classes for other instructors to take. You can't use the state of Hawaii seal to represent that you're part of the state or part of the department. Frankly, it's illegal, but that was allowed, that was being done, and without any kind of oversight, pushback, any comment by anybody, it likely was approved by the highway safety specialist, but that's my speculation, but that's based upon her relationship with the 3 master trainers that she had selected. This is where we get back to the DOE law. The DOE is responsible for training their own master trainers, train the trainers. But by limiting the number of people or the people that she decided that she certified. Again, certification is not part of the requirements under the rule, but by her taking on that responsibility, she excluded the Department of Education instructors. 11 who had been previously training Department of Education instructors, she certified none of them to be master trainers, 0. So that required the Department of Education to send people who wanted to be driver education instructors under the Department of Education to one of the 3 master trainers. So we saw in 2024, fiscal year 2024, 4 DOE employees went to private instruction with these master trainers at a cost of about $1,900 each, which the Department of Education paid. So she also interfered with how the Department of Education was providing driver education. She dictated to them how they would provide courses. During the pandemic, she limited online or virtual courses, not online, virtual courses to 14 people. She never changed that once the pandemic stopped. She limited in-person instruction to 10 people. She told the Department of Education how to provide instruction. The Department of Transportation has no authority under the rules, under the statute, to dictate how that instruction is provided. In fact, all the Department of Transportation, its rules has is the instructor has these responsibilities. He or she is supposed to be able to decide how they provide instruction so that they can issue the certificate. She also, this may be out of order of my slides, but she also decided that if an instructor was sick and could not complete the course, another certified instructor could not then step in and substitute to complete the course. The students who were under the instructor who could not finish the course for whatever reason, sick or otherwise, they had to start again from step 1, square 1. She decided that when instructors, their certificates were not renewed timely, even though the course that they taught was done when the certificate was in place, that those students, that certificate that they had received from the instructor, it was invalid. So she made up some rules on her own that greatly affected the Department of Education's instruction and the students that they provided instruction to. She required instructors to attend different kinds of classes to maintain their certificate or their license, not required by rules, not things that are outside of the rules. And those classes were taught by one of the master trainers, one of the 3 people that she selected. And again, it's not free, they had to pay. She suspended driver education instructors in a way that was not fair, not equal, not across the board. It was very arbitrary. Some people she suspended for different things. They were late in renewing their certificate. They didn't do certain things. In any event, it was not a fair process. She processed driver education applications or certificates for renewal untimely. We have a number of examples where this is a letter dated April 6th, telling an instructor that their certificate for May 2020 through May 2021 was now approved a year earlier. Here's another letter, same date, approving a renewal for another period of time the next year, and a third letter, same date, for the future year. So clearly she was doing things very differently for different people. For other instructors, if you were late and you didn't renew on time, your certificate was suspended. She directed county licensing departments not to honor student completion certificates. If an instructor had been suspended, even though the course had been completed by the student, the certificate was signed by the instructor while the instructor was still licensed, she directly contacted the DMVs, Department of Motor Vehicles, on the different counties and instructed the vehicle examiners not to accept the statement or the certificate of completion for those students. There were times when she suspended or refused to allow the DMVs to honor certificates where the certificate didn't include the student's middle name. There were many instances where some of her decisions and her authority, well outside of the legal authority, but some of her decisions and authority, very arbitrary, very questionable. Anyway, so these are the things that we identified where she greatly exceeded her authority. We detail it and a lot more in our report itself. We added a lot of recommendations, certify the curriculum, develop some consistent, clear, documented policies and procedures so that people would know how to run this program, and specifically just relating to licensing or certification of driver education instructors. So the Department of Transportation really has to understand what its roles and responsibilities are, how limited they are. It's really akin to DCCA and PVL and them licensing other professionals. You present the application, you give the required documents, you walk away with your license unless there's an issue that comes up later that you're investigated. Anyway, here's our file, here's our report again. And this is our website. Happy to answer any questions. I'm sorry that I did the speed dating speed.
I have a question, because I read the audit, and what also troubled me is about this DOT court monitored project paid members of a nonprofit volleyball club around $200,000 a year, and half of questionable work. And this is the same person that you talked about that was controlling this whole program, that also had this other program was doing also in conjunction with DOT. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you just give a brief?
It's
rundown?
not.
That's on page 46 and 47, members, if you have one.
This review of the Department of Transportation's driver education program, it was a very messy. We weren't messy, but understanding how things were being done, it was unbelievable. You know, we would get a lot of different responses from the same person at different times when we talked to her. So it was even hard for us to understand what she was doing or what she was describing. Things moved. So what we ended up trying to understand is what other responsibilities did she have? And this was one of them, the court monitoring program. And as we learned about this, and in fact, during one of the interviews, she jokingly or otherwise told somebody in my office that was talking to her at the end of the interview, if your daughter's interested, give me a call. So it's another one of these things where I think it's who you knew. And I think a lot of these people that were involved in the court monitoring were people that had some affiliation with her volleyball club or volleyball more generally. Some of them are high school students.
Can you explain what this court monitoring is and how it's related to DOT?
I think it's through a federal grant. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask DOT, but it's where the Department of Transportation and specifically this particular program is, I'm not sure the value in court monitoring, but it relates to how courts are sentencing or what they're doing with people who are found to have driven under the influence. I think it's alcohol, and how courts are dealing with that. I don't know and I think she told us the value she felt is the judge would see somebody sitting there and would not be lenient with the defendant. I'm not sure the judge even knew that this high school kid that's sitting there is somehow monitoring whatever sentence that he imposed on somebody that had been, convicted or had pled to some drunk driving.
Not a high school student?
I don't know if there's it's supposed to be a student at all, but certainly it raised questions about not only that there are high school students, and court does not operate on the weekends and after school hours. It's during the school day. We didn't go into that too far, Senator, because it was outside of the driver education program. It was just part of her other responsibilities that really raised some big flags about what's going on. And it tied to many of the affiliations that she has with has with her own volleyball club and just volleyball in the state more generally. So one of the people, or maybe all three of the people who were the people she designated to be the master trainers, there's some affiliation with her, and maybe it's a volleyball affiliation. One of the people that she designated seems to have a personal relationship with her. Their address is the same address. They co-own a house together. She denied it being her boyfriend or any other kind of personal relationship, but there's a lot of connection there. And certainly the fact that they co-own a residence together suggests that there's some monetary interest, so to speak, when she selects people for different roles, and she forces or mandates that instructors go for different kinds of training through these three designated master trainers.
So this person is still according to this, she left the department?
Department of Transportation can provide more information about this, but she went, as far as we know, or we did talk to her when she had moved from the Department of Transportation to the Department of Human Services. So we had some challenges in getting her to come back to talk to us, but those got resolved through the director. But as far as I understand, she's still there. I don't have any information to suggest that she's no longer at DHS. But certainly even the leaving the Department of Transportation, and like I said, the department can talk about that probably in more detail, but I think she gave notice after her last day kind of thing. It was very odd. She was a very challenging person to talk with, and I'm sure the department was challenged in having her on staff and supervising her. But I think the point is they didn't supervise her.
Any other questions for the auditor? He'll still be around because he has another auditor. So why don't we start with DOT then? I know Ed might have to leave and is really not involved in the other next audit, so let's start. You want to comment?
Yeah, so following up on the audit, I appreciate Les coming through and his staff coming through to get us the information on this. We followed up with all of his recommendations, so all of the recommendations are done. We've completed all of those pieces, especially getting rid of the employee that was there.
Is that, you agree that?
I don't know.
Done all the recommendations?
I don't know. We have not done any assessment. In a couple of years, 3 years or so, we'll go back and we'll review the implementation of the audit recommendations. But right now, we don't know. And the only reason why we know a little about DOE is just because I was looking around to see if they had done anything to address some of the recommendations.
So perhaps you to save some time.
Yeah.
You can provide the committee with a list and what
Can do.
exactly that you folks done to satisfy
We'll send
the
through.
recommendations.
Yes,
Be
definitely.
good. Members' questions, Senator Hashimoto.
So Ed, I guess, how do we prevent this from happening? Because I think, as the person that introduced the reso originally, you were aware of what was going on, and then I think just the frustration with your department's response is why we had to do this reso. And I don't think it should have been taken to this far, although we learned a lot, right? But I think, how do we prevent this kind of thing from happening? Because the symptoms were all there, right? I think the DOE was so frustrated, I was so frustrated, and so we had to do the reso. So why did it have to get to that? Why couldn't you guys be more proactive and really understand that there was a lack of oversight of this individual, right?
Since we started that conversation, we took a lot of action on that employee, limiting her scope as much as possible and resetting the program. It was in such a disarray. It took a while to reset the program. So it's not that nothing got done during that time frame. We had to reset everything that was being done during that time, especially the relationships with the DOE. So part of it was making sure that we reset with DOE, made sure that their instructors were certified, and made sure that we started resetting the master trainers throughout the state. Right now, we only have one. The whole goal for this year is to make sure we have at least 2 per island throughout the state. So part of the discussion is bringing in that class to Hawaii to make sure we get those master trainers going. But bottom line, we had an employee that wasn't being managed. We put management rails around that employee, then started resetting the whole program and everything she had worked on. We're taking action on that employee, and then she left. But before she left, she was on sick leave for long periods of time. That made it more challenging to take those corrective actions. So to your question on how we make sure this doesn't happen again, we've already reset what the requirements are for the driver's education program from the DOT's perspective. We have we have reset the priorities, and we set up our committee to ensure that those curricula for driver's education trainers is already set as well.
So I guess what is the system now? So who's overseeing? I don't think you probably have someone under you overseeing, but I guess it would be helpful for us to understand what is that hierarchy now.
Yeah. So
how has that changed?
The program is run out of our highway safety office, and our highway safety administrator and her direct assign is directly involved in the program. The person that runs the program is 2 levels below, but they're directly involved throughout, and they report up to the deputy on this to ensure that we and our relationship with DOE reset how many or how we can get more people trained in the state.
So who was her supervisor to begin with?
So under the highway safety office, we have a highway safety.
Safety office.
Yeah, an officer, and below that was our driver's ed specialist. Yeah.
Okay. So is that person still in that position?
The supervisor was brand new that we brought in to take care of this person. We brought in a person, a person from DOH who's really good. When she came in, she helped us reset the program.
Okay, now.
Yes.
So overseeing.
Before that, was the person that left in the interim. So that the position was open and or being filled and unfilled throughout. There were people who were oscillating in that position.
That was supposed to supervise.
Yes,
But
that's
who
right.
was supervising that
The
person?
highway safety
And
administrator.
who was that?
Is Lee Nagano.
And that's the same person?
She's still there. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's questionable. If she's still there, how come she didn't monitor this?
Yeah,
Knowing that position was filtering and so forth, knowing that all this was going on, I mean, there needs to be accountability.
Yeah.
And if that person is still there, well, I'm not sure what kind of performance they have otherwise, but that raises concern, because if that can happen under watch for that long period of time, certainly, I don't know what else is falling through the cracks.
Yeah, we've reset the requirements and the expectations for this program with her. Outside of this program, she is a high producer. So now we have rails around it.
Understand how that happens when you have to set rails when that, I'm sorry, I'm just.
Chair,
Okay.
you know, I would just like to follow up with that as well. I think we should open that also to the scope of who this individual staff was, because these people have been a part of potentially seeing and maybe turning the other way while this obvious abuse of power was taking place. And so I think that you were able to switch out leadership, but I'm talking about the staff. And I'm not sure if this is in the auditor's report of people that were in the office at the time, but this concept of tolerating, enabling, or just like how I said, looking the other way. I mean, this is what continues to create and breed abuse of power, not only in this department, but further than that.
Yeah, totally agree. So you're asking for us to send out the person's name and everything?
No,
Oh,
no,
sorry.
no, sorry. So just to clarify my comment, not necessarily a question, but anybody that was within her department or her office at the time, these people have been trained on bad behavior and abuse of power. So it's important that that gets another internal look as well, because they've seen this bad behavior. And I'm not sure how this individual had left the department. Maybe she resigned, maybe she retired. But I think that it's important to the department and the office to know that there are severe consequences when you abuse power. I mean, the auditor had said it was illegal to use state logos. So, I mean, we can really take this thing deep if we need to, but I think it's important for the office in general to just really see that there are harsh consequences with this.
Totally agree.
Chair. Thank you for that. I think maybe what would be helpful to you and to this body would be to ask the AG to intervene also and let her set up the investigation so that we do it properly.
We've already approached our AG with the information to do an investigation.
Thank you.
When was that?
I can get the date for you and I can send it to the committee.
Just recent?
I want to say it was last year, but I'll send you the
Nothing's
information.
happened of it?
I gotta check. I gotta check on where it's at.
Okay, yeah, I would like to get a report, because I don't know that things should stay languid, you know, and they're talking about investigating who got $35,000, and this person have spent and possibly 200-something thousand and a lot of other infractions. I would think that those kinds of things would get investigated as well,
Yeah.
if not more so.
I'll follow up on the dates and I'll get it to you.
And it's not that's important. It's to make sure that, all of us, your superintendent, as well as the department heads and everybody under you and under them, know that we have policies in place, and we don't want all of us to be under suspicion of protecting someone and not knowing the truth of what really happened.
Agreed.
Thank you.
And I think it's also important that there are checks and balances. There seems to be no checks and balances in the situation. And what worries me is that we don't know where else in the department until we get another audit that we might find some of this stuff going on. I mean, this program has been going on for 60 years, and only now all of this stuff comes to light. If it wasn't for a resolution, it might still be going on. I mean, we don't know. And that's what concerns me as we go forward. So we want to have faith in our state workers. We want to have confidence that they're doing their job, and that but yet we hear these kinds of incidences and it makes for bad morale, I think overall.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And overall, this is my fault because since 2014, I was running highways, and up to this point, that's all under my purview. I'll tell you quite frankly, that program was very small on my focus. So bringing it to light through Senator and through the audit was a good thing to make sure that we can readdress everything to move forward.
Well, thank you for stepping up and taking your responsibility, because so many times I hear excuses,
Oh.
but at the end of the day, it stops at you, right?
Yep,
Or
absolutely.
whomever. Well, the director, you were just highways at the time,
Yeah,
right? But you also had somebody above you.
Yeah.
Right?
So we took the action after we started the conversations with Senator, after the audit team came in and we started having the conversations. We didn't wait for the audit to be completed to start taking the actions.
Okay, well, certainly appreciate you responding to the auditor's report as well. Any other questions of DOT? Can we move on? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, just go pave our roads, okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, Superintendent, you're up.
Hello, Chair Kim, Vice Chair Kidani, members of the committee, Keith Hayashi, Superintendent. First off, I also want to thank all of you for the opportunity to respond, as well as the state auditor for providing their hard work and their insights into our driver's education program.
Let me just make a little comment right here. I just want it to be known to the public as well. You know, I'm not just picking on DOE or picking on, I have had a bill for years now that said that every audit that we pay for and every study that we pay for, that should have a public hearing. The results should have a public hearing. And so I am doing exactly what I expect others to do, other chairs to do, because so often we do these studies, we do these audits, and it's sit on the shelf or it comes by our desk. We're inundated with all kinds of reports and studies. We don't read it, but it should get heard and the public should know what's going on. So I just wanted to preface that, that is not just picking on a certain audit or, because I would hear it all if it's up to me. Okay, go
Thank you,
ahead.
Chair. So again, thank you very much to the state auditor for bringing these recommendations to light for us. Out of the 10 recommendations that the department received, 8 have been implemented and are done. The first recommendation, as far as the HAR, Hawaii Administrative Rules, we've started that process already. And we're following the 12 to 18-month process to get everything done. We anticipate it being completed by January 2027. So that process is already started. As well as recommendation number 10, which deals with reporting to the Board of Education. We are in the process of getting that agendized for the board. So I think within the next 2 or 3 months, we should be taking it to the board to provide in response to the information in response to the auditor's recommendation.
I don't believe any board member is here in person, but I do believe we might have one on Zoom. Weslow, is he on Zoom? But I guess my question is, did the board at any time take up the audits? This audit or the next audit?
For this audit, we are agendizing it with the board.
No, but I'm saying, did the board, before you agendize it, because they can take up whatever, I mean, this was out in the public already, so did the board ever bring this up in the meetings?
No,
No.
not to my
They
knowledge yet.
didn't bring
Yeah.
up the heat abatement one.
I believe, did we discuss the heat abatement?
Capson is here. Yeah, did the board ever take this up?
We're going to have a brief discussion on this.
August of, for which,
It's shortly after.
for the driver's license? How about they, both of them? And did they take any action or did anything? Just the discussion? What? Yeah.
Sure.
Question, yes. go ahead.
Sorry, you had mentioned the DOE recommendations. You folks did 8 out of the 10.
Yes.
Which were the ones, the 2 that you
First
did?
and the last one. First and number 1 and number
1
10.
and Number 10.
Yeah, HAR for number 1 and Board of Ed for number 10.
Let me ask this while you're doing that. So Superintendent, I
Yes.
looked at your response and I was a little troubled by that. Because according to the auditor, they originally asked for your response and you didn't give a response. Then you met with the committee, right? You, what? I don't know.
Sorry
That's the-
about that, Chair. That would be on our end. You may continue.
What? Okay. IT, is there something going on with our system?
We're good to go, Chair. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, so going back, so that you provide, you could have provided written comments to the draft report, but chose not to. And while you didn't participate, according to the report, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Assistant Superintendent, Office of Curriculum Instruction Design and others, including resource teacher who works at the high schools, met. And they didn't bring up anything that you brought up in your letter that you subsequently came up with. So I'm just
Sure.
concerned that, you know, and then they followed up and called, and then they were told that we do not intend to provide any written comments to the draft report, and that was in August.
Great.
Was that August or April? April.
Chair, you're correct. We did not provide any written responses to the audit. We do take the audit very seriously, and so we did take a look into the recommendations and
No, but
started working.
why didn't you guys take it seriously when it came out and provided any comments at the time?
We were in the process of, after we read the audit, the draft report, we started already working on the responses to the recommendations.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. Yes, please.
With every audit, we provide a draft to the auditee and we ask to meet and talk about the draft.
Before
And
you publish it.
That's correct. We don't share with legislators or anyone else. So we did that, and we did meet with people from the department. And we had a good conversation about concerns that they had about the report. We had a typo or some other mistake that we ended up correcting as a result of that meeting. And then we waited for the response, and when we didn't get it, we followed up to ask, are you going to provide us something in writing? Do you have written comments? And we were told no. And then the superintendent wrote to us 3 months later. So we had a good discussion.
Okay, so why was there no response? You didn't think it was important? You didn't think it was?
No, definitely we take the auditor's report as very important. My understanding was that we didn't write a response because we're going to adjust the recommendations in the audit.
Okay, now I'm going to take that an issue because
Okay.
according to your letter that you followed up 3 months later, you wrote a letter saying you don't agree with anything, that you folks didn't have to do rules, that you didn't have to do this. You faulted and said you didn't agree with that. So how can you be working on his recommendations when you send a letter saying you disagree with everything, not everything, but a great deal of what he said?
So I am getting, yes, I know. Yeah, thank you.
Who wrote the letter?
So it was under my signature.
I know, but who wrote the letter? Because
Uh,
obviously whoever wrote the letter didn't read everything because you subsequently sent another letter saying, we agree with you, right? So you went from no response to, and then a meeting and no response, and then you went to a letter saying, you know what, we don't agree with this because we didn't have to do this, it's not mandatory. And then they wrote back, and then you came back with another letter saying, okay, we agree with you.
I take responsibility for that, Chair. This was actually the first audit that in my years time that I started as a superintendent, this is the first audit actually that I put, if I'm not, you can correct me if I'm
Come on,
wrong.
superintendent.
That's the first one. No, it is. And so I take responsibility for any mix up. We do, at the end of the day, I take responsibility. We've addressed the audit. It is very important. I think what Mr. Kondo had brought up in terms of providing our students with opportunities, we looked at where we are offering driver's ed courses, where we're not. We need to the best of our ability, to expand a number of offerings for our students. We have developed the webpage. We're able to assess now what the need is. I think that was part of the audit that we weren't able to, or we are able to now assess the need. We know where there are wait lists at the different schools.
Wait, sorry, but you're not being direct in your answer. She's asking you why you didn't respond, why there wasn't an urgency. Now, I understand that this might have been your first audit, but anybody who's anybody knows that when the auditor is auditing, it's the most important thing.
Right.
So why didn't you respond urgently?
So, I take responsibility for that. We did it,
Well,
it's me.
Well, you're going to take responsibility
Yes.
because you're the guy in the seat.
Yes.
So whether you do or not, the finger is pointed to you.
It is.
Why didn't you respond immediately?
Well, oh, let me just add to that. The people that met, they've been around, they know audits, right? The people that work for you, they know audits. Part of them were in the meeting. So again, there were no response. So you cannot just say this is your first audit. And not only that is that, how can you write a letter saying that you didn't agree with any of it and then turn out that you did? Somebody were advising you to tell you that the auditor was wrong. And that worries me. To send out a letter that is clearly in error. I mean, I get upset with my staff if they send out stuff to me that is in error. You know, because I'm the responsible one to make sure that whatever is going on at the end of the day,
Yes.
that it's correct. Okay.
Yes.
And being superintendent of education with all you guys' degrees, I'm sorry, I'm just flabbergasted that you could send out a letter that said that they were completely wrong. And I think it says that in the letter. It blows my mind that you can say that they are completely, what was the words that you used? I'll find it somewhere in here. But what was the word that they used in the letter? You said the gross error, or anybody? I have the letter. Realty.
Bess, do you have the letter? Okay,
Yeah.
can you give that to the chair, please?
Okay. To clarify, statements of the State Office of the Auditor, when the audit report raises as a problem, however, is inaccurate. The legislature has never mandated department establish and administer a motor vehicle driver education and training program. Rather, it's been permissible. This has not changed since the law's inception. The audit report is correct that the legislature first addressed that. However, it did not require the department to establish a driver's education program. Merely states the department is hereby authorized. Legislature, let's see, to this day, the program remains permissible. Not once during the nearly 6 decades after Act 42 inception has the legislature made any such mandate. The department is unaware of why the legislature did not mandate the program. Like the driver education program in general, the department's interpretation of the statutes that the department is authorized is not required to do that. So, and it goes on, and you cite things, and then the next letter you send out and you agree with them. I mean, somebody did some research to say that we didn't mandate that. I mean, I'd like to know who did that.
That was in reference, Chair, to when the state auditor did reference, I believe it was 302A 413.
But the whole gist of this is that you're saying that you're not required to do rules. It's not mandated that, right? I mean, that's the gist of your letter.
We are working on HAR and in the process of that. That'll be finished by January 2027.
Okay, questions, members? Yes, please.
I can appreciate, on the neighbor islands, the fact that there's a shortage of available opportunities. Do you have a number, I guess, between the auditor and Department of Education as to the level of unmet need both on Oahu and on the neighbor islands?
We do, I believe we do have that number, Senator.
Well, if that can be provided
We can provide it
to the
yes.
committee chair, I think,
Yes.
the goal would be to really see how we can assist the department and, respond to whatever unmet need there is, but it's hard to know how much is needed. And so that's kind of why I wanted to get a ballpark, just, to get a sense of what it might take to address that unmet need. Thank you.
Senator, when we were looking at the audit, because that was one of the concurrent resolutions request, without the wait list, there was no way for us to determine or understand, what that demand was. So I'm not sure what the department has implemented since then, but hopefully they've implemented some tool that would allow them to calculate the demand. One more comment before I get off my podium here. And unfortunately, the DOT director's left, but it allows driver education can be obtained or completed through online courses, which the director needs to certify those courses or that curriculum. Online is different than virtual when the teacher is right there in the room and you're watching on video. So the opportunity for students on neighbor islands, for instance, or other places to be able to complete driver education, there are other opportunities. It's just right now we're talking in-person instruction and or virtual and not online courses, which the statute of the rules certainly allow.
Let me ask you.
Senator, may I?
Yes.
Senator Fukunaga, thank you for that question. The website that we have stood up for driver's education. So if students want to apply for a driver's ed program, going into that website, they would select the school that they want to apply to, put the application in. And so it's through that site now that we're able to calculate the need and yeah, right. So thank you.
Superintendent, what is the cost to deliver this driver's ed program?
We don't have that. We have to, okay. Superintendent Terry Shichum.
Good afternoon, Chair and
Afternoon.
members of the committee, Terry Ushijima. So we receive from the Insurance Commission's fund $2,200,000 a year. And of that, 1,500,000 is used for projected school programs. Like 52% of it is for instructor fees, administrator time for the coordinators. It's also for maintenance things like vehicle gas, maintenance, repairs, and equipment. You have
The
to
question
check.
is, what does it cost the DOE to deliver the program? Not what's in your budget, not how much money you get. What is the cost to deliver this program so far?
So currently it's about 2.9 to 2.7 million a year.
Okay, so the amount of money that's provided to you is enough to cover the delivery of this program.
Yes.
Okay, the delivery of the program such that it doesn't necessarily means you've been delivering it the way it should be delivered.
Yes.
So is there an anticipated amount, what is going to cost to be able to deliver the program the way it was intended? To be a statewide program, consistency across the board and so forth. What is that?
I think, Senator, what we'll do is we'll take a look at how many students have signed up. We can take a look at also expanding the program. So we need some time to do a further analysis, and then we can get that to the committee.
Okay, my concern is that this program has been going on for 60 years, and 60 years we have no data. I mean, according to, we don't know the wait list, and these are stuff that you should know, because the next question is, who determined the cost? Who determines the cost that we're charging the participants?
I think that cost has been set over time. I think there's something else in it that we need to reevaluate.
So you've never reevaluated the cost?
To my knowledge, no.
Why not?
So it's determined by the Board of Education, and it's been $10, and the fees that's collected goes back into the general fund.
Yeah, it's middle school, right? $10. It was not 60 years ago, $10. Nothing stayed the same 60 years ago, what it is today. I'm not saying that we should be charging, whatever it costs us to deliver the program, but the fact that one, you haven't even reviewed it to see, I mean, we review bus fares, you review school lunches, you review everything, but for some reason, it seems like, again, what the auditor pointed out is that it's not been taken seriously, the program. I don't know how else to
We'll do a
look at this.
analysis, and then we'll do a reassessment of the charges. Chair.
How many students are we serving right now?
I have that. So we're still in this school year. So last school year, we serviced 3,637 students. Well, they enrolled, and of that, 2,975 students passed the course.
Do you know how many wanted to take the program and couldn't for whatever reason?
No, and that's where the audit was helpful. We are now looking to track that.
You guys never thought about tracking that before?
Well, are we starting to track though? Because we must
Yeah.
have the wait list now, right?
Yes, we do.
And we don't have some preliminary data.
I do have some preliminary data. And these could be duplicate counts because a student is able to request more than one site to be on the list. So for Kauai, we have and it fluctuates because when it's an ongoing list, so as they open up seats for upcoming courses, they could be taken off, but more people add, constantly. So right now we have 37 for Kauai, 95 for Maui, 200 for Hawaii Island, and Oahu is fairly large. We have 633, but a large portion of this is because we have 171 at one of our large high schools. And we're taking steps to partner with another instructor from another school to do the virtual part of the program. So we're trying to bring that number down.
Because part of it is, it's the hard part. I'm sure you can do the in-classroom instruction fairly easily. It's behind the wheel instruction that I'm sure is a little bit more complicated. So it's kind of like a bifurcation of how you got to figure this all out, right?
Yeah, so by partnering with another school to do it virtually, then we could free up that other instructor's time
To do the behind the wheel. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
If I can redirect to page 21, or if we still want to stay on the data at the appropriate time. Okay,
Fine.
page 21, please, of the state auditor's report. It is stated in there that a deputy superintendent who is over this program has mentioned to have limited understanding of the program. Is that deputy intendant still with us, or previous deputy superintendent?
You're in the meeting.
Hi, Deputy Superintendent. So in the state auditor's report, it was mentioned that you had said you had limited understanding of the program. If you have limited understanding of the program, why are you overseeing it?
Correct. I don't directly oversee the program, but I do oversee the office, and the conversations in the audit here or in the audit meetings were very helpful to grow my understanding of the details of the program.
Who directly oversees it?
The Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Curriculum and Instructional Design,
Who is that?
Terry Ushijima.
Okay, but you're over her, right?
Correct.
Okay, so ultimately you oversee her who oversees the program.
Correct.
Okay, so it brings me to my next point where you had mentioned you had just learned that in the state auditor's report that you had just learned this is a 2-department program. That seems pretty basic. Did you not have understanding that this was DOE in collaboration with DOT?
I did know that it was I didn't know the details of the responsibilities of each program, and that is something that the auditor helped clarify in the audit report. There was confusion about who was responsible for what under each department, and I think that was a big finding of the auditor's report.
You had also mentioned that you were lacking guidance. Who were you expecting to give you guidance, being that you are the overseer?
No, we were, that was referring to guidance for the driver education program, which was one of the recommendations in the report. And so we now have clear curriculum and clear protocols for implementation.
Yeah, so this is very concerning that deputy superintendent that's supposed to be overseeing this program has limited understanding, not even knowing the basics of this is a two-department program. So how are we expecting to move forward if you still have the same people that are in these positions overseeing these programs that are not taking initiative and being proactive and getting to know these programs? And how are we going to have confidence that these are the people that are going to be helping to promote our programs, make sure that there's all the checks and balances in these programs? I mean, where can we really start getting some accountability? Because the state auditor, according to his statement, is sick and tired of auditing the Department of Education. Okay, so this is where we are finding ourselves, not sick of it. I'm not sick of it. Frustrated. Yes, because this is where we've got to get to the root of really what this is. And time again, the arrows are always pointing to leadership. It's always pointed to the deputy superintendents, the superintendents. So where can we start getting some hardcore accountability where people are just knowing the basics that this program is a two-departmental program? I mean, that sounds pretty basic.
Thank you, Senator. Ultimately, the accountability rests with me. I am the one that's accountable for it. We have reviewed the audit. We've made addressed the recommendations. I think there is definitely more articulation going on within the section to be sure that everyone is well aware of what the requirements are, what the driver's education program is, and the importance of us working together with the Department of Transportation, who has been very helpful in helping to secure the necessary certifications for employees.
So is it not, does this deputy superintendent just not take a proactive approach in learning the programs that are under her purview?
They are very proactive in.
Well, it seems like they're not, because it says here that they have limited understanding of the program.
And I think
So that doesn't sound proactive. It sounds very apathetic.
I think in any situation, even for me, I'll to admit, I think coming into a department, it's not an excuse, but there are many programs in the department, and it's a continuous learning. Even for me as a superintendent, I learn every day something new. It is my responsibility, though saying that, to be able to oversee the department and the breadth of what we have to do and the importance of it. Every program is important. And
Yeah,
so,
these deputy positions, although superintendent, with all due respect, this is not a learning on the job type of
I
task.
agree. Mhm.
You don't come in and then learn. You learn, you master it, and then you come in. And so maybe these deputy superintendents are just not equipped for the job.
Okay, if I may, Senator, the selection of the deputy superintendents go through a very rigorous selection, and the ultimate decision is mine on who seats in that very important seat. The deputy superintendents that we have, or we're fortunate to have working in the department right now, are very adept, very knowledgeable in their area. And we'll continue all of us to work together to ensure that we're delivering quality programs for our students.
Or maybe they're too in-depth. They don't know the real ground level things. We're finding that they're so educated, maybe they're too educated to help us with very basic things that our school needs. So I'll say that. Thank you, Chair.
Follow up. Is it always going to take an audit before folks understand what your responsibilities and roles are going to be? Is it always going to take an
No,
audit
it will
to
not,
do that?
Senator, no.
That's what it appears, because you know what? Yeah, you can say now that the audit made you aware, but the reso was introduced back in 2022. When the reso was introduced, already you should have been looking into your program. If you had no idea, which you should have an idea, that's why and you have hundreds of people working for you. You have a whole slew of administrative people working for you. During the year, I have 2 people, and during session, I have 4 people. 4 people, and I know more about some of your programs than you do. How is that possible? Right? I'm just saying, how is that possible? And you're asking for more people and money for more leadership people? That worries me. I'm sorry, it does. It worries me, because in 2022, when this was introduced, I don't know how come you folks didn't say, what's going on with our driver's license? You got to wait for an audit to come out to know what your responsibilities are, to understand the program. I mean, 60 years this program on the books. You've been coming to the legislature, you know, and yet, I don't know. I don't understand. I'm sorry. I just don't understand how that's can slip you folks and not understand what they're doing. I mean, it's not like this is a tiny little program, you know, in some school in the rural area. No, it's not.
We'll be definitely more vigilant
So
in.
is there a
looking at-
reason why in 2022, when the audit, when the resolution was introduced, that you folks didn't then say and be more aware? So by the time the audit came in, you could answer his questions?
We'll be much more aware, Senator, of different resolutions that come in from the legislature
No, it's not.
and
just a
continue to take them
resolution.
seriously.
Folks are supposed to know your programs, and if you don't, when we bring this stuff up, and then we have to go to a resolution, but even then that should even light the fire at that point, right? I mean, it's not like, you know, I mean, come on, this is your program.
Yes, we have started taking some steps as we work with the auditor's office, even before the final report. But I understand, and yes, we
Provide a report back to him. You guys didn't even respond. Even after your meeting, even when you didn't know you didn't understand what your limited understanding, you guys didn't even bother to write a report or give a response. It's like thumbing your nose.
Well, it definitely wasn't that, and we'll do better to in the future to be more responsive.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, this was a good, you know, audit. I think it gave a lot of information, and I understand as the person that was pushing this, you guys were in a really tough position. That, you know, the DOT was kind of micromanaging the DOE, and so I think at least we have a breakthrough now, and hopefully they're not micromanaging the department. So I think there was some really good takeaways from this. At the end of the day, all we want are you know, to increase drivers' education, to increase enrollment. I think there was probably a lot of helpful things. I think when we introduced this audit, we didn't know that there was structural issues that you really needed to work on. And so I think at least now you know, and we can move forward. So hopefully you can get those last two recommendations completed.
Yes.
But I think I have to say we're in a far better place than we were back in 2022. We're not quite there, but I think we're in a much better place. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
okay, we are going to move to the next audit, the heat abatement audit. And let me just say, part of my frustration, Superintendent, is that we're going to see a thread running through everything today. With this next audit, we're going to see a thread as to the DOE and the failures of the information. And when we get to Medicaid, the same thing. We're going to see that. So that's why it's just building. So when you say we're going to do better, it just worries me because it's the theme that's running through this whole thing.
Sandra, may I ask a comment
Yes.
about what you guys were talking about? I think it's important and necessary that any state department, any program be accountable for state resources and state money. Absolutely. By the way, I never said I was tired of the deal.
Giles,
Um,
I was being
but-
dramatic.
But I think it's very important. And our job is to provide recommendations, our suggestions is how to make them accountable, how to address the issues that we identified, meaningful recommendations. And the department is, I guess, trying to address those recommendations. I got to say, both for transportation and education, the key is they need to have policies and procedures, documented processes, so that the people who are on the ground doing the work, they know how management expects them to do that task, to do that work. We would call them controls in my office. Senator called them checks and balances. You need that. They need to have document processes.
Yes, I'm going to interrupt right now because you know what? As instructors, as educators of our students, they have to do that in the classroom. They have to do that with the students. They know that already. So I don't know why it's falling apart at the upper level when on the lower level, you got to have all of these reports. You have to have all these policies in place, right? Or the parents are going to be up in arms, or they cannot go to college. They don't have the SAT scores if you don't have those things in place. So it's falling apart there. So
But it
you're
would-
preaching to the choir. You're here because I
I hear you,
believe that
but-
it's important. So
But for this, it would allow the assistant superintendent and deputy superintendent to make sure that things are being done the way that they expect it to be done. And they would have a process to be able to evaluate that. And we would, when we come back for an audit, to be able to actually evaluate that process, that program, whatever they have in place. But
Even
thank you.
more important than that, I think the individuals in these positions should also be evaluated. And that's another thing with Board of Education. Are you folks evaluating that? You know, I know you folks made some salary adjustments and stuff. Where's the evaluation? And where's your evaluation of the people under you delivering the programs? So that's important as well. So, okay, bless. This is on report number 25-09. Auditor, an update on the Department of Education's heat abatement efforts. So for those of you out there, heat abatement, air conditioning of our schools. Okay.
Can I share my screen again?
Yes.
Or just. I'm not sure what the message I have is.
IT, we need help on this? Okay, I think it's getting.
Hi, yes. So we're just
I
gonna
just-
do the same exact thing as earlier, Mr. Kondo,
Okay.
through Zoom.
Did it not work? Is it working? Nope. Hold on.
Okay, Mr. Kondo, Ricky is gonna go down to help you out with that.
Okay, why
Sorry.
don't you start anyway?
Okay, I'll start anyway. I don't need the slides. My presentation is way shorter, much shorter. And that's because, so what we did is we did a report about the Cool Classrooms Initiative, and as well as at the time, what was the current air conditioning initiative, which was school-directed AC. We looked at both of those programs. Neither of those programs are in existence today. The initiative has completed or finished, and the school-directed AC program, it's my understanding, has been revised and is no longer the program that schools can use to air condition their classrooms. So this report, my discussion is much shorter, just because those are things of the past. Act 47 in the Governor Ige's State of the State address in early 2016, he announced that he was going to cool 1,000 classrooms by the end of the year. And in 2016, the legislature appropriated $100 million to support that effort. So what we intended, because we had capacity, just to do a relatively quick and dirty accounting of that money. How did the department spend the $100 million? Was there any left? How many classrooms were cooled? How successful was this initiative from the department's perspective? That's what we intended to do. We had done a similar accounting in, I think it's 2017 or 2018, about the cost of the Hawaii Super Ferry to the state of Hawaii. And very interesting, at least to me, we discovered and reported that until the year 2028, the state continues to pay millions of dollars on bonds, on GO bonds that the state had issued to support the Hawaii Super Ferry, specifically for the barges and the ramps that the state had built in the harbors. So we wanted to do a very similar kind of report, just a report, not an audit, to account for how the department spent $100 million. We expected it was going to be easy. We expected the department was just going to be able to provide us accounting records or some kind of spreadsheet that would show where the money went from this specific appropriation. It wasn't part of the department's general appropriation operating budget. It was specific for air conditioning classrooms. What we found is we couldn't do that. The department couldn't provide us with the accounting of the $100 million. They couldn't tell us where that money went and whether it was $100 million or they used some money from prior years that made it more than $100 million. We were able to get a number of different lists from the department about what classrooms, what schools were air conditioned, but those lists were not consistent. They were different. They had different classrooms, different number of classrooms, different schools, as well as different amounts. So what we thought we were going to do to try to determine how much was spent, we decided we wanted to go look at the contracts themselves, the contracts the department had executed to facilitate this initiative, to put AC in classrooms. So we went those documents are maintained in paper form. So we went to their office in Kaimuki so that we could look at the boxes, the contract boxes. And unfortunately, not all of the contract boxes were there. They were missing a number of contract boxes. Information in the boxes themselves were missing. For instance, we hoped to find final closeout information to see whether or not contracts had been amended, whether there had been any change orders that would have added to the cost of the project. We could see the contracts, but we couldn't see any other documents in those boxes. But at the end of the day, sorry, now I have a screen. At the end of the day, wrong one. Anyway, darn it. Oh well. Anyway, at the end of the day, what we were able to calculate was that, and by the way, we put a disclaimer in the report at the very beginning, full page, which we never do, about the lack of confidence that we have in the actual data. And we explained how we ended up calculating. This was an audit. We probably wouldn't have been able to complete it. This was just a report. So we put a big disclaimer, which is right at the beginning of the report, to explain how difficult it was for us to get information about the Cool Classrooms initiative. Anyway, we ended up determining that for the 100 million, or maybe a little more than 100 million, about 25 million of that was spent on consultants, design consultants. We also determined that most of the AC that was installed was solar AC. In other words, it was not connected to the grid. It was a separate contained system, solar panels directly to an inverter, directly to a split system AC unit. They were not window units. Most of them were split system units that were installed. On average, including design cost, on average was about $120,000 per classroom that was cooled. So we ended up determining, based upon information that we had gathered, and we have a nice graphic in our report with the different schools that we believed were air conditioned under the initiative, with the amounts of the design consulting costs as well as the construction costs. And we calculated that the department had air conditioned 838 classrooms over the state at a cost of about $105 million. That's as best as we could determine, and a lot of that from our review of contract files of those boxes that I described, as well as other information. We determined also that there was a lot of, maybe it was because it was rushed, but there was a lot of design, I want to call them errors, where contracts were entered into by the department to air condition classrooms that were already air conditioned. That air conditioning was installed, or PV panels were installed on, and most of these were installed in temporary, what do I want to call them, portable units, portable classrooms. Some of these are very old, 60 years old, or maybe even older. And the reason for that, it was much quicker for the department to install in those classrooms, because the structure of the classroom, it's a contained unit, wooden structure generally, so they could more easily install the PV panels on the top and install the air conditioning. The ventilation in those units, not the most insulated type of classrooms, a lot of leakage. So at the end of the day, we identified where these panels were installed under big banyan trees. Nobody said anything. We talked to the people at Castle High School, and they questioned why the contractor went ahead and installed them. We talked to other principals at other schools. They questioned why AC was installed in certain classrooms when other classrooms really needed AC, not the ones that they were installed in. They were installed at Mokapu, and I saw an article recently, the new Mokapu Elementary School has been built and dedicated. They were installed at Mokapu Elementary, even knowing the school was destined to be destroyed and rebuilt. So there was a lot of errors in how the department implemented this mandate, or this initiative, Governor Ige's initiative, to get to 1,000 classrooms by the end of the calendar year. At the end of the day, our challenge was we couldn't see any records. There was many people in the department that were involved in the initiative who are no longer there. One person who was the primary person, he retired and then he passed away. So in addition to the fact that there were no records for us to review, to understand what the department did, how the department spent the money, there was no one for us to talk to. And I think that's really the big takeaway from this, is the department needs to keep records. The department needs to do better record keeping. They need to develop these procedures. We don't have any understanding as the criteria as to how classrooms were selected, how schools were selected for installation of AC units. So I think that's the big takeaway for the committee is the department needs to improve its record keeping. It needs, like I said earlier, with respect to driver education, they need to develop documented processes, these controls, these checks and balances, so that people that are doing the work that they can do it to make sure they achieve the mission or the purpose of the department or whatever that program is, that their supervisors up to the superintendent, they can make sure the work is being done in a way that they expect it to be done to achieve that purpose or that mission. And then the supervisor can make sure by looking at what they're doing, documentation of that process, to make sure the person who's responsible is actually doing it the way that they expect it to do. And of course, when we come into audit, we can actually audit that process. We can see the record, we can see the documented processes. So to me, that's what the department needs to do. 100 million, it's passed, it's gone, but without documentation, we don't know how it was spent. The department needs to be more accountable. I know that we're well past all of this. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, and then real quick with school directed AC. So the department took a huge pivot before the, okay, okay, you gotta put it full screen or do it from that slide. It's fine. Current slide. Thank you. Thank you. So this is the graphic I was talking about that we have in our report. It's a nice looking graphic. It tells you a lot of the information per school and island about where AC was installed, the cost of design, as well as the cost of construction for those schools. Picture of Castle High School where they installed the PV panels under this big banyan tree. So the production from those panels must be very limited just because it's under shade for most of the day. Moving to school-directed AC, the department took a big pivot in moving from the Cool Classrooms Initiative, or just generally how they were air conditioning classrooms under CIP money, where it was department controlled. The department controlled the construction. They executed contracts to install AC. The big pivot was they went to this school-directed AC where they put the responsibility to air condition classrooms on the schools themselves. Individual schools now had the ability under this different program to air condition their own classrooms. And it was generated, or maybe it came about because there were some reports about parents and student organizations dropping off air conditioners at schools because students were complaining about how hot their classrooms were. So it was an opportunity for schools to be able to install those window units. And they were window units, people weren't likely dropping off the split systems. It was window units. And it was an opportunity for them to be able to install those AC without having it be a department-wide effort. So what happened is the department issued, or the assistant superintendent, deputy superintendent at that time, the assistant superintendent at the time, he issued this memo, which created this program. Very little detail to the program. It's just this one memo that provides some information about this new program. And the concept of this program was that in exchange for so what the department really wanted to do, which is kind of an interesting side story, the department doesn't have, or at least when we spoke to them when we started this audit, they didn't have an accurate inventory of classrooms that had AC, which seems really odd to me that these are your buildings, Department of Education. You can't tell me which classrooms, which schools, and which classrooms in those schools have AC. No, we don't know. And I was told, or we were told by the deputy superintendent at that time that, and I don't remember his title, but somebody else that was also very involved in this area, that the principals, school principals kind of dictated their own, it was kind of like their own kingdom. If they asked, they didn't, if the department asked, the principal sometimes wouldn't respond. And the example that had been raised to us is the department wanted to install PV panels above a parking lot at a school. The department owns the school. The department pays the energy bill, but the principal said no. The principal said no, and we see that all over the place. We see that in some of the DOE offices where they have the PV panels, which is great. It provides shade, but it generates energy. But we're told in that school, the principal said no. So that was the big question, was what's the inventory? So this program was intended to help the department gain that inventory, understand what classrooms at what schools had AC. So in exchange for that, what the department was offering these schools that went through this school-directed AC program is they were offering the department a free electrical assessment. Electrical assessment may cost, we were told, up to $10,000. It was really to assess whether or not the school, or specifically the buildings where they wanted to install AC, whether the electrical system could handle that additional electrical load. If it can't, there could be serious safety issues, short circuits, maybe even fires, we were told. But that was the carrot. It was to incentivize schools to participate in this program, report their inventory of AC in exchange for this service that the department was going to pay for the electrical assessment at the schools. We had trouble understanding what schools participated in this, the website that we were given. I'm sorry, I'm just talking about without the PowerPoint at this point, but we were struggling to understand which schools had participated, what the inventory was, how recently that inventory had been updated. We were given first a dead website and then later on a live website, but even that website, it didn't seem like every school was inputting the information, the active inventory, the current inventory, and they were inputting it different ways. Again, it gets back to my point about you need to have some control. You need to have some procedure, some process, so everyone does it the same way so that you can understand that this is, this school and this school, we can compare the apples to the apples and not an apple to the orange. But anyway, so my long thing here is, again, this program got scrapped. We were told at the end of our audit that this program was no longer a current program, and the program was being revised to something else, where the schools now would lose some of the control over their AC, where contractors were now going to be, the contracts with contractors to install any kind of AC units or any kind of other work relating to these AC units were now going to be, those contracts were going to be procured and entered into by the department. So it took some of the control, or maybe a lot of the control, out of the school and put it back into the department to deal with contracts to relating to AC in classrooms. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, given that perhaps that challenge of procuring contractors, that process, it's not easy, and perhaps maybe the expertise is not at the school level. I'm not sure exactly how things were done at the school level to install window units, but the window units that were installed, by the way, the cost per unit was maybe about $5,000. We reported, and I'm sorry I don't have the slide right here right now, but it was about $5,000 per unit, in contrast or in comparison to the split systems that were done under the under the Cool Classrooms initiative that penciled out to about $120,000 per classroom. So there's a significant difference in the cost to air conditioning classrooms under the school initiative, School Classrooms initiative, and the school-directed AC program. I'm sorry, that's all I really wanted to talk about. I just think that we didn't offer recommendations. It was just a report, but at the end of the day, the department is really not accountable for that money, and they need to be better account more for that money. 100 million is a lot of money, where it went, how it was spent, the process they went through to ensure that they were spending it reasonably and responsibly. That needs to be documented. And that was my point initially about the Cool Classrooms initiative. No documentation. They need to document better.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
On page 23, you state, from the start, many of the solar AC systems failed or didn't work properly, resulting in a salvage effort with an estimated cost between $3.3 to $6 million. The troubleshooting team dispatched by DOE would later discover that from the start, many of the solar AC systems failed or didn't work properly. They noted that contractors' final inspections found obvious installation issues such as missing insulation, exposed wires, and other issues, but were not able to identify many of the hidden PV and battery problems. The troubleshooting team also found air conditioners that were damaged by geckos or rodents, which contractors and contract managers considered act of God damages, which they were not obligated to repair. They also found fundamental issues that could have been addressed during the design and planning stage. So all of this.
I think that the department's challenge, and partly I'm speculating, I think they also told us some of this, that there was not one contractor or one manufacturer that could provide all of the installation of AC. So they distributed the work through many different contractors using many different types of equipment. And because of that lack of any kind of standardization, so to speak, there was some challenges with who was installing, how it was installed, and the equipment that was installed. The other big challenge is many of the classrooms weren't cool. They went, the parameters for the AC, it was something like 75 to 78 degrees or something like that. And teachers may not have been aware of that. And they were trying to run the AC to cool their classrooms well below that parameter of 75 or 78 degrees or whatever it was. And to your point, Senator, I know you called it the AC thing, but the response was by one of the consultants is this is heat abatement. It's not AC. So it's to reduce the heat in the classrooms. You know, and then we also report in our report about challenges where the department decided they were going to seal jealousy windows in the portable classrooms so that they could keep the cool air inside better. But, you know, that also created a very hot environment when the AC wasn't on, like in the evenings or after school. So it became a very hot classroom. We also have an MK Think study commissioned or paid for by the Department of Education, where they comment about the air quality when you close up these portable classrooms, where the carbon monoxide level or carbon dioxide level, excuse me, gets to the point where it could impair learning, impair cognitive thinking. So there are a lot of challenges in what the department did, and I would suggest it's because there was a rush to spend $100 million within this very short amount of time, and maybe even more than $100 million.
Thank you.
So I think at the end of the day, we have very few of these units that continue to work in the way that you'd expect them to work. Many of them are dying. You know, the warranties or the lifespan of not only units, but also the PV panels, but maybe more importantly, the batteries that were installed, they're reaching the end of that life cycle or lifespan. And I think some now are getting plugged into the wall, into the grid. And, you know, I don't know, we report about it too, but there's also another law that the legislature enacted that same year that requires the department to be net energy zero by a certain time, very quick, very, very soon, if not now. Very challenging when you're sticking in AC into the wall without taking out a bunch of other kind of electrical loads that likely are present in classrooms. Anyway, thank you.
So the numbers you quote in the audit, those are best guesstimates then, because you couldn't get
Yes.
on concrete data. So that 108, whatever, that's
103 or whatever.
103, that's the best that you could come up with.
Based upon looking at files and things, there's other numbers that we report some of them that get tossed out, but we're not confident in it.
Got it. Thank you.
Also, Chair, before, with the new website, it looks like it requires a login. How did you get the login?
Oh, wow. We requested and they gave us a login. It was first to a website that was not active. And then they gave us another login to the active site, but I'm not sure. We haven't logged in since we issued the report, so I'm not sure it's still the active site.
Okay, and then at the time when you did log in, it was outdated data information.
It's inconsistent data. Some schools seem to be current and other schools seem not to be current in terms of their inventory. And I think we know that because we feel like there's some schools that got sent or AC through Cool Classrooms initiative, and we don't see those classrooms identified in the website that you're referring to, Senator, where the schools are required or are supposed to report their inventory.
So according to your report, you can't quantify or prioritize where these ACs were put in what districts, in what schools.
I think we did a good job. I think we did our best, and that's that chart in our report to identify, you know, where the department put the air conditioning. So we identify, you know, by island, schools on each island, where we saw contracts relating to AC under what we think is the initiative funding. Is that what you're asking me, Senator? Yes.
That is, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent, granted, you were not here in 2016, but you know, I'm sure there's people on your staff that were here. And I understand that, you know, you took over in 2022. So, but still this issue remains as a concern. I am pleased that you did respond, you did send a response in to this audit. You didn't address many of the issues, however, the main one of the documents and the contracts and the number of schools that have air conditioning.
but you did say that the department had already initiated proactive measures to enhance procedures for the school-directed air conditioning program, which I would want to know what was initiated prior to them concluding their audit, which is what you stated, Your Honor.
Thank you, Senator. Joining me, Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Jesse Suki. Senator, to your question, one of the proactive measures was the state office did from the school-initiated ACs, institute a process where now schools would work with the Office of Facilities and Operations to request ACs, whether they're going to put ACs or not. And I think that was in response to Department Facilities and Operations being able to really assess and get a better handle on where our ACs are, and what else needed to be done to get a baseline analysis. But Deputy Suki, if you want to add anything else.
So let me ask this first. Is there still a school-directed AC program?
It's been modified.
It's been modified.
Yes.
And what it's called? Is it called that?
Yeah, it's still the same thing though, yes.
And how long has you have this modified program?
Is it
The memo went out in January 2025 to all complex superintendents and principals. And then the follow-up guidance was sent around, is dated November 5th.
2025.
Yeah.
So 1 year,
November.
January. No, but you said in January 2005, you sent the memo out.
Oh, January 29, 2025, there were a memo about the procedural changes and talking about what the SDAC
Okay.
new
but it-
program would be. And then the guidance after that really went into detail about what needs to be
November.
done in the process. Yeah, it's November.
So very, very recent. So you never provided the list of schools that participate in the school AC program. According to the auditor, he never got that list. So are you attempting to get that list, or are you?
We have a list. We have a list.
Was that list given to the auditor?
I don't think we send it over. We didn't send it over, but
When did you finally compile this list?
I started 5 months ago, but I asked for it and we have a list. It shows all the, it shows where the money was spent. It shows what schools it was at. All of the money that was under Act, the $100 million, Act 47, it's accounted for in our fiscal management system. So we know where the money was spent and what for, and we have a list of schools.
So you came on just about the time that this letter was written for the audit.
September, yeah.
Yeah, so the letter is dated August 1st. How many architects, remind me, that you folks have in your meat facility? We talked about this in the,
architects and engineers? Senator?
yes, we talked about that, right? In the.
24 positions, Chair, architects and engineers.
Okay, because we asked this
13
question,
field.
we asked this question in Ways and Means.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry, I took notes after you asked. It's so 34 architects and engineer, A&E, 24 engineers, 10 architects.
Right, well, thank you for taking notes and looking there, because I'm concerned on page 9. And I've said this before, yeah, I sound like a broken record. I'm concerned about the number of consultants we hire, the number of apps we rely on or department relies on. But on this page, there were 7 design consultants for the 25.3 million, which I think the auditor did mention. And under this Miller Kelly architects, we have architects, but we had to hire these architects, and they're not the only one. We also hired Pacific Architects. And then it's 5.3 million, but on the bottom it says DOE would end up shelving much of MK Tank multi-pronged conceptual framework for cooling classrooms as bids for installation. Expensive solar AC system classroom consumed its 100 million budget. 25 million, I mean 5.3 million just down the drain. And yet we have all these architects. But why do we have architects if we're going to hire it all?
It was 100 million. and this is just me like reviewing all of the materials and trying to figure out the same question. 100 million in a very short period
Okay,
of
that's not
time.
the question.
But the contractors help deploy the money because it's a lot to do in a short period of time.
But you
that's
folks still do that to this day. That we brought that up in WAM. You still hire architects. We have all the contracts that we went through in WAM. All the architects, all the engineering firms, and yet you still have them on staff. And I understand that some of them are doing overseeing work, right? They oversee the projects, right? Project management work. But then you hire a consultant to do project management. And then, so the architects and engineers that license oversee the overseer. And I've brought this up before, and it's like here in writing, all of this money being spent. And I have a hard time understanding that.
We are trying and looking at, it's one of the deliverables we have for our strategic plan to look at how we handle our contractors and to sort of reduce our reliance on them. But having at least some contractors helps us deploy CIP.
Understand,
Yeah.
some contractors, yes, but it seems like that's the standard because so for some reason, after you hire state workers, be it architects, engineers, I think they are afraid to maybe do the work because they don't want to get audited. I don't know what it is. So it's easier to hire a consultant. And you guys are the only one. DOT does it all the time. At the airports, we even had engineering from these companies would sit at the desk on the 7th floor of DOT. And if you walked in, you wouldn't know who was the consultant and who was the worker. And they since stopped that because we kept harping on it. But these are the kinds of things that goes on in state government. So it's either or. You either hire all these architects and engineers and they do the drawings and they do the stuff, or you hire out. And there are going to be times when you're going to need some outside help, but it shouldn't be the norm. Or we don't need them. Hire project managers and hire them all out. Contract them all out. Right? I mean, we've got to look at that. So I hope you folks will.
We are.
I don't want to have to do an audit on that, but I'd like for you folks to look at that.
Yes.
Okay, I have other questions, but I will go ahead. Questions?
Yeah, with regards to the Castle High School, you folks put in AC, solar AC in the classroom that was sitting under the banyan tree, the monkey paw tree. And now the department is, because the sunlight doesn't hit the solar panels because of the monkey paw tree. Now the department is actually having to pay to cut the trees so that the sun can hit the AC. So how much is that costing the departments? That kind of maintenance. So you see how mistakes have consequences. And now this is an ongoing issue that the department is going to have to continue to use funds, taxpayer funds, to pay for this maintenance. It's like you guys are forcing this thing to work and you're putting it in places that basic common sense says it's a cooled classroom. It's under a monkey paw tree, where your DOE architect even said, and I quote, "This is a very rushed project, a very rushed project." So
Senator, I understand your point. How that particular portable was selected for the solar AC in the Kuya Classroom project. I'm sorry, but I'm not able to share why that happened and why that particular classroom was selected during that time.
Terry, are you able to comment? Oh, sorry.
Oh, me.
Yeah,
Jesse.
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 Sorry, you're Terry. Thank you.
No, I was just going to say that I agree with what you just said in the auditor. It was a rush project because the money lapsing was a very short period of time and a lot all at once.
But isn't that being the norm? You folks get all this money for CIP in a short period of time. You can't spend it all, and that's why we have such encumbered funds that are sitting there. You cannot build 12 schools. You only built, what, 3 schools? I mean, it's like, it's a norm. So
I think, Chair, we appreciate the support from the legislature, and we've shifted from the process to lump sum buckets for deferred maintenance in those different areas. And so that actually provides us with the flexibility to prioritize projects that need to be done. So we appreciate the legislature supporting that.
Yeah, that has helped a lot. And we do have, the schools, they're either in design, waiting for construction money, or, we're asking for design money to get them moving. But, they're not just sitting.
But more,
And we hit, oh, sorry, go ahead.
more troubling than even that for me is the fact that documentations are missing. Contracts are missing. You guys don't know. You guys don't have don't know how much money was spent. I mean, how can you guys manage $100 million of the taxpayers and not have the documentation? To me, that is 101. So I'm very troubled by that, because again, it seems to be a pattern.
So that was concerning to hear that and read that. I did look at and see that we have tracked all of the expenses for this 100 million. We spent about 98 million, and about
So when you were out, I asked them if they had the information, if they know how many classrooms. They said they did all of this, but they haven't submitted the report to you or report to you. So
Deputy Superintendent was not employed at the time we did this.
right, no, but just
We
recently.
asked many
Right, right.
times, okay, and we got
Yeah.
no autonomy that the deputy superintendent is representing he has. We did not get. that.
Yes, no, but I'm saying they said they have it now, so hopefully you'll get it. So can you guys send that?
We moved on, and I want to clarify, I didn't say the money would lapse. I said it was rushed, probably because there was an
Oh.
initiative by the government.
Somebody said it would lapse.
Oh,
The deputy superintendent said the
There-
rush was because the funds would lapse.
Oh,
I
that's
didn't-
right.
I wasn't implying that they would lapse. It was because there was a initiative to meet 100,000 classrooms by the end.
Well, yeah, it was a great political statement, right?
Right, but not lapse. That
and
wasn't my.
and there was a lapsing concern as well. So it's both of those things. Yeah.
So for your, so I don't, it's great that you found all those documents. I don't know, did you always have it all the
Well,
time, or
we
did you
had them.
not?
They just, it was not easy to retrieve because they were in these boxes.
You couldn't find the box, so the boxes were missing.
They have them. Needs to be retrieved.
Or did they just not wanted to give it?
Storage.
So I guess, so how, okay, so moving forward, I hope we don't have boxes. I hope it's, so hopefully digital at this point.
If I may, on that point, yes. One of the changes that they've made at OFO is to digitize all of their documents and keep them in files, digital files.
Okay, so, and I assume the login that he logged into and there was, you couldn't get any info. I assume that's updated as well, because I think what we really need to understand is, are you guys actually, and we had this conversation, are you guys actually using that software to truly track projects now?
So
Because it's no sense to have the database and then you don't use it, right? Because I think this is a good example of why you'd want to track it. So at least if you get audited or somebody makes an inquiry, you can easily, well, we could even follow along, right? So we don't have to call you and you send us a spreadsheet every time. We could just go on and see where our project's at, right?
yeah, I don't know the status of the outward facing, but I know that internally they do use the CPT to log in these projects as part of the school directed air conditioning project workflow. And it's tracked that way through the process.
I get the air condition, but
Yeah, yeah.
I'm talking about this is just an example of your greater CIP projects that we are very, very concerned about, right? Because it's really hard for us to track, right? People on the ground tell us one thing, we go up the chain and it's a whole different story. And so, I think if we follow this air conditioning audit, they're telling you all the systematic things that you should be changing. And I think it applies to a lot of other areas in the DOE in terms of facilities. And so I think we're just trying to understand moving forward, what have you guys corrected? But I don't know, like you're not giving us a good understanding of, okay, this is the things that we've implemented since then, right? You're not giving us that the online system is working. So, okay, well, we don't know if the tracking is actually working. Are you empowering other people to do, things at the school level, like the people that could have caught, right? Are you empowering them to say, stop the project because we don't think that's in a good location, just like the transformer at Wailuku Elementary. I don't know why somebody didn't catch that before, but you put in the wrong location and now 2 years later, we're still waiting, right? And so I think those are the systematic things that we need to understand that you've actually corrected because of this audit, right? And that's the purpose of an audit. We're trying to get better, but you got to pitch to us.
Yeah.
What is it that we've done to get better?
So I keep pointing to this, but this is the guidance. And one of the important things about the guidance, and I think part of what you're saying is people who have to implement this, like principals and CASs, they have to know about it. And so HOFO has been going out and training on this, which came out in November.
But that's just for air condition, right?
But it's for other projects too.
So it's all project.
Yeah, we have larger projects in here too. Yeah, and so for the ACs, if it's a window AC, not a split system, it doesn't trigger certain things, the money's there, then it goes through this kind of fast track. But if it's not, then it goes into our larger project.
So is there a system, if they feel like they need something at their school, can they log it somewhere so at least it goes up the chain? Because I think that's why a lot of the principals were trained. Okay, there's nowhere to input it for the DOE, so go ask your legislator, right? And then you got upset because we're putting in too many line items, so now we're giving you a pot. But everyone needs to understand what is the process, and if we don't know what the process is, I would like to see what my principals are asking for. So at least you got to be sharing what that information is, right? So we don't have that data though. There is no input. Oh, you can request a project because there's that need at the school.
What they can, there's a way to track in this process that we have these projects. But I think what we're talking about now is funding, right? So if there's no funding, then
but we got to understand what the need is, right? Because a part of it is I don't know how you calculate your R&M backlogs, because what data are you using and how old is that data, right? And so part of it is if you're not transparent with the data, it's hard for somebody to verify, like the auditor is saying, right?
Yeah, we are working on providing a list of projects that are priorities.
Okay, this is a segue.
Yeah.
Page 38. A new website and old problem. The school-directed AC program project tracking website called CPT, which stands for CIP Project Tracker, was intended to enable DOE to track projects including schools, air conditioning, inventory. Yet when they visited the site in April of 2024, it appeared to be inactive. And during an April 24th meeting, DOE officials confirmed to us that the site was dead, describing it as rendering of a site and said it should be taken down. However, a few weeks after the meeting with DOE officials, the site was populated with large collection of data that appeared to have been uploaded over a short period of time, including attachments as such, but suddenly the present information appeared to be of little value. So has this project tracker been taken down, or has you folks fixed it, or what have you done with it?
I can say internally with the way we track projects, we also use CPT. That is working.
So this is updated and working.
As far as the public facing side, I would have to ask. It is version 2 is up and working. Yeah. So,
When did that get up and running?
when did that get?
What? No, it's not working.
No, it's new.
not
The
working.
CPT
Before your
2?
time.
Yeah, 2.0,
2.0.
which requires a login.
Okay,
Our access was not to the public, it was to the DOE.
Right.
That's why it required, it was to the DOE's internal access.
So this 2.0 website that's in your report?
Pretty certain it was to the DOE internal access. It's not a public facing.
but it's still not.
Yeah, but it still has.
I just clarified that it wasn't a public facing database. That's why we required access, login access from the public.
But they did say the site was dead, right?
Yes, it's still.
It's to be taken down. So is this site similar to Design Build Jobs Tracker? Design Build Job Tracker that I used to try to track my CIPs in my district, which I brought up to Audrey about this, and I was told that the system is also not active or working or.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. That's different. They say.
It's on your website. Somebody directed me to this. We looked it up. We went on, as you can see, this is a Mauna Loa project. And that one had no update. And this one is Kalihi Waiena, last updated 5/21/2025. I went on that date or right after that date. And all it has on here was the amount, $150,153. And it has Kevin Maury is the contact, and there's nothing else fill in. And I brought it up. I brought it up to Audrey. I brought it up to Janine, I think. That what they say, oh, that we don't update this. I'm like, then what the hell is it doing?
Yeah, that could be that's one of our legacy systems possible. I will look into that.
Again, no, okay. Thank you for looking into it. But the problem is you have all these systems, nobody's paying attention to it, nobody's updating it. We can't get information. I asked for information. You give me two different sets. In 2023, you gave me a whole set. I asked for the same update. I get a whole different set. It's not even consistent. I don't know what you folks, how are you keeping track of your own projects if you cannot even give it to us and we ask for it?
We're working on that request for the projects for you.
This book came up almost a year ago, and still nothing. And I don't know, Kevin Morey, I don't know, is he supposed to update this? There's no meeting scope, there's no start date, there's no preliminary design received, there's no final design, there's no permit submitted, nothing. It's all blank. It's all blank. Every single, except for the amount and the name of the person.
Chair, if,
Same thing for Mauna Law's project, same thing.
My apologies for that. If, give us an opportunity to get together and we can come back and present to you and share, a system that, is up and running and working.
Superintendent, how many times do I have to bring it up with your staff before I have to come to a hearing, bring this up and embarrass people before we're going to get any kind of update or fixing or answers? I don't like to do this. And I don't know where the Board of Education is if they're not reviewing some of this kind of things. And that's why I wanted the board to be here. Because my question goes back to the board. What are you folks doing as far as following up?
Yeah.
That's their one and only role. I have how many other roles? This is not my one and only role committee I chair, but yes, I sit on all these other committees.
Chair, it falls to me to be sure that these things are up and running. If you give us an opportunity to regroup and we can come back and share back with the committee, an update.
Yeah, because you know
Yes,
my
please.
issue with Kaliwayan at the bridge.
Yes, I do.
You folks went in and asked for it and said all the health and safety, and then you folks went and lapsed it. Yeah, and did not let anybody know about the lapsing. And then you guys, because you folks said you didn't know that the city owned it. Come on, after 3 years of the project, you didn't know that the city owned it? That again, it just boggles my mind.
Thank you.
I think the bottom line is, just from this audit, and I told you this in person, Superintendent, but I think this committee just needs a clear strategy of where we're going with facilities, right? I think the air conditioning thing that was before your time, fine, but I think moving forward, it's still not perfect, right? I think I've expressed my own frustrations. As the chair is not the only person who has issues with CIP projects in our district. And we only ask because at the end of the day, the people that, we care about, they're concerned about it, right? I think I'm trying to get a transformer installed and it's just like an act of Congress to get everything moving, right? And so I think that is very difficult. But I think what we need to understand is that there's hope, that we're moving in a direction, that we understand what the strategy parts are, that all the small pieces that we're going to see something that's much more successful. We're not going to have something like the 100 million we can't account for. But I think we haven't heard that yet. I think that's why it worries me. I think the board, when I told you in WAM, when I asked board members what their strategy is, they don't know what the strategy is. I think every single member of that board needs to understand what is the strategy in facilities. We have to all be going in the same direction. And so I hope you folks can articulate that very, very clearly.
And thank you, Senator, and that would be incumbent on me to be ensure that the strategy is in place so that I'm able to share with the board what that is. So that's on me. So I'll take responsibility for that and we'll do better. Thank you.
If we can go to page 15 of the report, it says here at the bottom, let me see. A media report at the time, which was based on DOE procurement documents, found that the highest per classroom bid came in at $360,770, which was to install a solar AC in one portable classroom at Eva Beach Elementary. $360,770 for one one solar AC system. Where are these numbers coming from? Page 15,
Was it 1.5 or 5.0?
1.5.
Sorry.
You know
Are you
that?
asking me?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I was actually intending it for DOE because you
I'm-
were,
I'm not sure that the question about where they're coming from is what you're asking, because we got it out of a media article, the $360,770 for that one class.
We don't know where they
yeah.
got.
So
that-
I'm
where they
asking
got
where that number came
that
from.
Figure came from. I don't think they had their time.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where the media got that from, but we can see if we can. figure
Okay,
out
let me
the-
just move on to my next.
Yeah.
Sure, we can move on. For the classrooms that were enclosed with plexiglass, what is your solution to remedy that? Because there's a large number of classrooms in my district that are sweltering in their classrooms with no AC and now no ventilations because the jalousies have been plexiglassed.
Senator, if you can let me know what schools, though.
Not
the
a schoolie
schools
high
that-
school.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. The schools that I do know of, plexiglass was installed inside of the classroom, but they were installed with those clips that can rotate. So those plexiglass, the glasses could be removed. But if it's permanent, then we will definitely take a look at Nonakuli High School.
Yeah, it's permanent. It cannot be removed.
Okay.
And so it's making it uncomfortable for the students and also for the teacher. It's very hot conditions.
Anything else?
Yes, sorry, page 25. The DOE repair log registered nearly 1,800 requests for air conditioning maintenance from 2018 to 2024. With the 1,000 AC initiative, how are we logging in a repair log of 1,800 requests? Is this just multiple repairs on one AC?
It does cost money to maintain ACs. If it's a school initiated AC, then they maintain it. If it's the PV ACs that was done with the Act 47 money, then we'll go and maintain it when they put a request in, and we'll maintain it that way. We have a tracking system for repair maintenance. Yeah.
Okay, if you could share that with us. I mean, again, I think we could avoid a lot of these really difficult moments with just transparency, clarity, but then also response time is very important. Like, I think we could have gotten through halfway through with the driver's license briefing had you had just responded in a quicker amount of time to the state auditor, and then also giving us the information that we need as well. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Can you give us a report on what is it gonna cost as these batteries die out, as these systems, the ones that were put in under the $100 million, and those all age out? What are we gonna do? What's the plan? How are you gonna keep these classrooms cool?
We're actually looking at that issue now as they sort of come of age. Right now, we're maintaining them. We probably have about a couple years more where we have to make tough decisions about them.
Well, you're not gonna wait till the couple years come. I mean, we
Oh,
want
yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah.
We don't know what the plan is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And what the cost is. One of the things that I hope that DOE and the board will do is, as we add programs and as we add personnel and positions and so forth, what is the overall impact to the state budget? And I don't think we look at that. We look at it in a vacuum, early education, early child care, all of that put together, charter schools. What is the impact? Because already DOE education takes up 1/3 of the budget. As we continue to add on programs, it's going to take up more and more. And then sustaining that. And then like now, I don't think it's in the budget on how to sustain the $100 million air conditioning or whatever it is we put in or didn't put in, right? And what happens when they get old and we have to recycle them now? So that inherent cost is going to be very impactful. So I hope you folks are looking at that. And as you come forward, as you ask for your budget and CIPs, that you folks are mindful and you present it to us as to these are costs that's down the road that We can't kick the can down the road continuously. So just to summarize, basically putting things in context and just the two audits, in the driver's education report, there was a lack of leadership allowed at the lower level specialists to hijack the program. In the heat abatement, staff departures and rush planning led to chaos. DOE couldn't count the money in the heat abatement. DOE couldn't count the student demand in driver's education. The auditor describes the heat abatement project as a $100 million disaster and the driver education program as structurally incomplete. So has a single DOE administrator, contractor, or decision maker been disciplined at all? Held financially liable for any of these failures? And if the answer is no, which I suspect it is, how can you assure this body that the next $100 million appropriation won't suffer the same fate?
A lot of the leadership's not here or people who worked on the heat abatement, but also I would have asked, could you give us a few years to spend the money instead of just one? So we could plan it out.
Understand, but I'm just saying that the structure of the DOE that's in place, whether the bodies change, but there are some bodies that are here, long time. I've been here a long time. And so, it's not just because that special individual, something is not right with the structure and the oversight.
Systemically.
Yes, and documents and record keeping and so forth, the basics, somewhere along the line, there's a disconnect. So how can we have the confidence? And that's, I think, what we want to know. We want to move forward, but it's hard to have the confidence because the same things happening again and again. So that's something to think about as we go forward, as we go into the session, as we address bills that are going to come. And some of the bills may be addressing the very things we're talking about, because again, the trust is not there, so we got to pass a law. Right? And even when we passed the law, 60 years, the law never wasn't implemented the way it was intended. Okay, so with that, we are going to move to the last item on the agenda. Believe it or not, we still have one more item on the agenda. So the Medicaid reimbursements, as you guys transition here, focuses on a critical but often overlooked issue: the Hawaii Department of Education's failure to fully and consistently draw down on available Medicaid reimbursements for services already being provided to eligible students. Medicaid reimbursements is not a discretionary funding. It is federal money owed to the state for qualified health-related services delivered in our public schools. These include services such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, behavior health support, and nursing services for students with disabilities. I know it sounds like this is a health committee, and it's not. It's education. So there's been this colliding of responsibilities, and I think sometimes put at the detriment of our schools and our teachers. It's very difficult because that's not what they signed up for, but they now have these responsibilities. But in the case of the Medicaid reimbursements, year after year, we've been leaving some millions of federal dollars possibly on the table. When we compare Hawaii to other states, the contrast is stark. States with similar or smaller student populations routinely draw down 2 to 3 times more Medicaid reimbursements per student than Hawaii. Many have invested in proper billing systems, staff training, interagency coordination, and compliance infrastructure to ensure that they capture the full federal match. And Hawaii has just not kept pace. This is especially troubling because the legislature continues to appropriate state general funds to cover these services. The services are already being delivered. Medicaid reimbursement could directly offset state costs and reinvest resources back into our schools. So in short, this is not about expanding programs. It's about basic financial stewardship. So today, we hope that the department will explain why Hawaii's reimbursement rates lag so far behind other states, what barriers, the administrative staffing or system related, have prevented full participation, how much federal funding has been foregone over the past several years, and what concrete steps are being taken with timelines to fix this problem. Because at the time when every public dollar matters, failure to claim available federal funds is really not acceptable. So our students really deserve a lot more, and our school needs the resources, and our taxpayers need the accountability. So with that, Superintendent, I know we've talked about this, so.
Thank you, Chair. Joining me is Deputy Superintendent Heidi Armstrong, who will be sharing about the Medicaid reimbursement.
Sure. I'll provide an update on the department's Medicaid reimbursement process. I'm hopeful that I'll outline, or to be able to outline clearly, the Medicaid claiming pause, of which we did have to take, the compliance steps that are underway, and the plan to resume and expand claiming so that the department can appropriately access federal funds to offset state costs for required health-related services. So the department was claiming for a limited number of services from about 2019 to 2023, but in November 2023, the Medicaid reimbursement section identified a critical error in the department's electronic record system, and this system failed to accurately report the ratio of nursing services provided to students. The system defaulted to a 1-to-1 ratio when in actuality, some of the nurses were serving multiple students, but our system was not able to accurately record that, and that led to improper claiming at a higher reimbursement rate than should have been allowed. So when the Medicaid section caught that, they halted nursing reimbursement until the system could be modified, because that's what needed to be done. The department continued to seek reimbursement for administrative claiming and worked to restart the direct service claiming, and in this case, it was nursing. In January 2025, MedQuest, who is our partner from DHS, and they are our state Medicaid provider, halted the Medicaid administrative claiming processing. This was due to compliance concerns regarding provider eligibility and federal guidance that disallows the administrative claiming process unless the direct service claiming is continued or is also conducted. So later that year, MedQuest provided the department with a guide to school-based services that outlines the requirements and expectations for direct service and administrative claiming. In May 2025, the department submitted its time study implementation plan for Medicaid administrative claiming to MedQuest to meet the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services compliance deadline of June 30, 2026. In November 2025, the department was informed by MedQuest to submit a quality assurance plan that aligned with the Office of the Inspector General standards before any claims can be submitted for direct or administrative services. The department has submitted a corrective action plan to MedQuest to address past noncompliance and has engaged a consultant to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and gap analysis on all Medicaid reimbursement activities conducted by the department. This report will create the scope of work and implementation roadmap for the department's quality assurance plan as required by MedQuest. The department is working closely with MedQuest to resume direct service claiming for select nursing services by March of this year. Expanded direct service claiming is projected to resume on or before January 27. Thank you for the opportunity to share the update and the proposed timeline for our Medicaid billing, resuming Medicaid billing.
The consultant, when did you hire this consultant?
And we worked with MedQuest and selected the same consultant that they work with, and January 8th.
Of this year.
Yes, ma'am.
And what cost?
$24,000 something for the initial scope of work, or to do the gap now.
And is there reoccurring cost?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Is there a reoccurring cost?
No.
No?
Wait, Michael.
Michael Stanbury, I'm the administrator for the Medicaid reimbursement section.
So Michael, in your estimation, why have this been so problematic? Going forward? I mean, you don't have enough people, we didn't get it right, the system, yes, so something went wrong with the system, but at the same time, the corrections, I mean, enlightened us.
Sure. That's a very complicated question. Thank you. As far as the direct service, when we stopped what we were claiming and we
You were only direct servicing nursing, right?
Yes,
There
ma'am,
were others
because-
you could have done as well, but we haven't done that.
Yes, ma'am. Nursing by its very nature is a medical model. It's a doctor must prescribe the service and a nurse is therefore going to provide the service. So it follows a medical model. The other related services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech language pathology, and behavioral services, the Department of Education uses an educational model as is required too. So it follows IDEA and provides FAPE to our students. In order to claim for those services, it requires a medical model. We recently are, as of November, switching to a medical model, but unless we're in a medical model, you can't claim for those services.
But you folks have resisted moving to the medical model.
We did initially, and we were having many conversations with MedQuest. We did have different opinions on the school-based claiming model versus the medical model. But we do, and other states do have versions of a school-based model that is a bit more friendly to school-based service billing rather than the strict medical model, which follows like you would bill in a hospital. However, after many discussions and many attempts and many plans, and wanting to get a move on this, we have accepted to move to a medically based model in our school system for Medicaid reimbursement.
So when you say medical model, it really is just getting a therapist or a doctor's approval for a service. So what direct services can you expand for special ed students? I think that's the problem.
Sure.
Not a medical model, but medically approved for licensing of these various services that you could provide to the student.
And thank you for that question. None of the services are, whether we bill for Medicaid or not, services do not change for the students. When we say a medical model, it's the way that the providers, OT, PT, speech, and our nurses document their services. Right now, we have a process in our IEP, and our related service providers have an educational model for keeping record of their services. When we move to a medical model, any service that is provided, we must have a physician's authorization or a physician's diagnosis.
Therapist who is providing that kind of service, right? Not necessarily a physician.
No, we need a physician to give a diagnosis that service is provided. So we currently provide service based on need, not based on a physician's diagnosis.
So how many special ed students do you have that are eligible to get Medicaid
I have that
services?
number. Yes, ma'am. So let me preface this by saying they'll have a Medicaid ID, which means at some time in their life, they were assigned a Medicaid ID. It doesn't mean that today they're still Medicaid eligible, but there's about 4,495, if I had to guess. That's the right, 4,495.
That's quite a.
Yes, ma'am. Out of about 19 or 20,000 students that qualify for special education, about 10,500 or so qualify for related services. And then that other sub
So
number.
how do you work with the students? Because our special ed students do need the services. So my understanding is the teachers, the IEP's teachers, the special ed teachers are the ones who work with the students from kindergarten all the way to high school. So you must have the records in the system. Is that correct? So that you can assess in your your Medicare reimbursement section. What do you do?
We do. Every student who receives any kind of related service has an IEP, and that service is recorded in the IEP. And then the documentation and record keeping of the service is all together there. So when a service is offered, it's because there was an IEP team meeting with all of the relevant parties, and it was determined that this service would help assist a child with their education based on assessment results that showed the child has a need. So with the medical model, that will still continue, but we will need to get a doctor's diagnosis saying the child
Gets that? Does the medical reimbursement team do it, or who does it?
the parent can give it to the school,
Okay.
or the parent can give authorization with proper documentation for a designated person at the school to work directly with that child's healthcare provider to get that information.
Because I think that's a disconnect, because you've got 19,000 students that may have services that they need, and somebody should be helping them. And I understand that the special ed teacher does have the IEP meetings and brings everyone together. What happens to that information so that somebody's assisting the parents to say, you could get these services, and putting that together? I would think the medical reimbursement section should be working with the teachers in the schools to show them what needs to be done and getting that information. Is any of that being done at all these years?
Yes, in order for us to claim for the nursing services that
Or
we're
whatever
claiming,
services, direct services.
we did need parent permission, and parents were given information on what we are seeking. We would like to be able to claim reimbursement for these services. They were given information on how this will impact them or not, and
So
they have to
but
sign
how
off.
is that, how you're supporting the teachers, supporting the families to say, these are the kinds of things we can give you? Because the more you can support them, the more reimbursement you can get. I understand it's 50% of the
Right.
cost.
Our process right now for providing services to children wouldn't change with the Medicaid reimbursement. That's a team decision based on
But you
assessment
could get more
data.
monies back
We
to the state,
definitely, we
right?
could get more money, and that is our goal. And to your point, we do recognize we are leaving money on the table, and we it's not an excuse, but it's very complex. And yes, other states have done it and have been doing it, but we do have good partners with MedQuest, and they are helping us move forward.
How much did we pay out for special education this past year? Let's just say in 1 year. And how much did you claim of that for direct services?
We didn't claim for direct services
At
this
all?
past year, no.
And when did you do 2023?
2023.
Okay, so 2023, how many students and that you claim for, and how much did you get in reimbursement?
No, ma'am, I do not.
We do have that information, and we can get it to you as a
Yeah, 'cause
follow-up.
I think we're
Yes.
looking at what are we leaving on the table, but if you don't have data and you're not claiming, that we're leaving
Right.
everything on the table.
We do have the data when we were claiming, and it was minimal for that particular subgroup. With the transition to the medical model and the training of the staff and the new record-keeping system that will be required, we will be able to claim for more direct service or for more related services other than nursing.
So you're not claiming for any of the other services like assisted technology, behavioral health, speech therapy, none of that?
No.
So according to what I have here, in 2020, just the direct service for nursing, we got only $830,401. In 2021, for the nursing direct service, 1.5 million. And then in 2022, it went up 2.5, 2023, 6 million. Then it dropped in 2024 to 3.8. And then in 2025, I mean, you did an administrative claim all those years, and that amounted to, for 5 years, 7.4 million, but nothing was claimed for 2023, 2024, 2025.
Correct, because our current system, and during that time, we've been working with vendors to get a system or an add-on that will allow our claims to be submitted correctly. The platform that we're using statewide currently does not support that, and that it does take time, but we also recognize time is of the essence, but that we have been working on that. At this point,
When did you recognize that?
in 2023, our Medicaid section recognized that they had the reimbursement they were expecting to bring in was actually higher than what they projected. And so that caused a deeper dive. And then it was recognized that when the claims were set, differentiating one-to-one services versus one-to-many, a nurse with one-to-one or a nurse serving serving 2, 3 or more children, they were being recorded the same way. It didn't differentiate the service. And why? Because our system doesn't have the capacity to do that.
Who was inputting that information?
The nurses, when they provide their service, they have a service log and they input it there, and we gather the information
And
from the system.
who's the nurses giving the service? Somebody from DOE, no?
Yes, ma'am. It'd be
Who
my
is that?
section, my section.
Your section.
Coincidentally, the skilled nursing contract falls under me also.
Your section.
The Medicaid reimbursement
So
section.
you would know whether it was faulty or not.
Well, when we discovered it, it was because we were expecting X dollars back for our reimbursement for direct services, and we were getting Y. We're getting more. And so that caused us to go in and look at each individual transaction to see what the difference was. And that's when we figured out that it was all and we worked with our IT department, OITS, to help figure that out also. And that's when we figured out that we were submitting every single claim as a one-to-one instead of whatever it actually was. And a one-to-one claim is $68 an hour, or back then it was 50, but $68 an hour. So a 1-to-2 would be half of that. So instead of claiming, for example, $34 an hour, we were claiming $68 an hour for that same service. And that's why we stopped.
So, but you had a third-party administrator, the UMass Medical
Yes, ma'am.
School. When did that terminate then? And you're doing it now? And now
No, ma'am.
you're still with them?
No, ma'am. In June, we stopped with UMass because we were
June,
of last year, because we were transitioning to a new third-party administrator, which is PCG.
So what was happening when did they start? 2006?
My goodness, a long time
Yeah,
ago. I think
so-
UMass started 2012, but
Okay,
a
so
long time.
all of that time, wouldn't you have a system in place already?
Well, the hurdle there is that because our third-party administrator back then, UMass, cannot see our system, they can't see our IEPs, they can't see everything that we submit, they take on faith that we can prove that what we submitted was accurate. They can't see into our ECSSS system. So to catch it was on us. They submitted the claims and they said, okay, we expect the DOE is giving the correct information. Turns out we weren't, we caught it. And when we caught it, we stopped.
Okay, so when you caught it, and simply the way you said it was that you were claiming, all the claims are going in as a one-on-one, which some was 1 and 2. So why couldn't you just adjust it?
The system didn't allow us to. If we were to go in, the issue in the simplest terms, so if you have 3 kids at a school, so they're 1 to 3, if at any time one of those kids goes home, or if there's 2 nurses and one of the nurses doesn't show up for work, it's going to change the ratio. So it might go from 1 to 3 to 1 to 2, or it could be a tube feeding. So at 2/3 of the day, it's 1 to 3, but when the tube feeding comes in, it's 1 to 4, and our system can't fluctuate, like it can't differentiate. So it just put all of it in as 1-to-1.
And how many students are we talking about?
Back then, when in 2023, we had about 500 or so, we have 607 today that are receiving services. About a third of those are IEP,
And I
or
think I
two-thirds.
asked this question, or I made this remark, is that, why couldn't it be done manually then? I mean, it's not everyone that was three or 2-on-1. You had individuals, so that number wouldn't have been that great, but, or hired, temporary help to do that.
Yes,
Because the amount of money that you left off the table is greater than what it would have cost.
As we discussed it the other day, we were trying to find a solution for the problem, and it included switching to PCG because we wouldn't have that issue under PCG. So in 2023, when we stopped, quite frankly, I didn't think of it. I didn't think to go and drill down. The kids that we assume that we're going to be able to claim for on a 1-to-1 they're the only kid at that school. So there's no chance that they will ever become a 1-to-2 or a 1-to-3 unless another kid gets added, right? So quite frankly, we didn't think about it back then.
Still put in for that 1-to-1, right?
If we had thought about it when we stopped, yes, ma'am, we could have, but I just didn't. We were trying to find other solutions, and that's my fault. I'll absolutely take the blame for that.
I just find that hard because, I look at every way in which I can save a buck, right? I mean, and if I don't think of it right this minute, I'll sleep on it. I think about it in the shower, and then finally it'll come to me, and why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? All the bills that you guys see on the table, that's how we figure it out, right?
Yes,
We
ma'am.
dream about it, no. But yeah, it's like, and it's not just you have a slew, but you have 12 people. I don't know how many people you had then.
8
Nine.
plus me, not right
Yeah,
now.
I
Yes,
mean,
ma'am.
you don't have to take tanks, okay? Let's
I
brainstorm.
have some very smart people. Yes, ma'am. And we were just pursuing other solutions to try to get the
Well,
entire.
I think that's the problem, right? Tunnel vision. You only want to see one way without seeing, what about other ways of doing it in the meantime? What, a Band-Aid approach in the meantime, we Band-Aid everything anyway, what?
I don't disagree with you, ma'am. That's my fault. I didn't think of it. So, but we are going to pursue it now, and we're going to isolate and find out how many kids that are the only kid at the school that are receiving related services in an IEP, and try to manually claim for them.
Can you manually claim the others and hire somebody in the meantime and claim the others? Because it's a matter of just splitting them apart and putting in the right numbers, right?
It would be determining which of those students are 1-to-2, 1-to-3, or 1-to-4, and because it fluctuates throughout the day, I do not believe we have the capacity to do that manually. And when I say manually, it's a piece of paper for every kid, for every service received every day. I mean, it's a lot.
So you find another system though.
We are, yes,
1-to-1, 1-to-2, 1-to-3. What is the service?
yes, ma'am, we
And
have
finding a direct route. to
our new
say, this is the
platform.
service,
Yep.
these are the services they need, and you get it approved. And then you could do the 1-to-1, 1-to-2
Yes,
thereafter.
our new
instead of
system.
stopping everything so that you can't get it through.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is, so you have one nurse and one student, right? So when you are 1-to-2, now you have one nurse and 2 students.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
now she has 2 pieces of paper. So
Uh,
he's gonna write down, okay, I worked with this kid for 15 minutes. Okay, I worked with 2 of them for 30 minutes. Okay, now all of a sudden you got another student. Okay, that's the 3rd piece of paper. She doesn't have 1,500 in one time. She doesn't have 25 at one time. She might have 4.
Okay.
Right? She has 4 pieces of paper that she has to fill out. Those 4 then goes on to the next therapist. I mean, I just don't understand how that cannot be manageable for a short period of time.
And we will explore that. The team is planning to resume the direct service claiming manually for the 1-to-1s by March. Simultaneous,
Consultant for this, the hiring consultant.
we hired a consultant for the quality assurance.
Because, I
Plan.
could easily be a consultant and tell you guys it's good manually. I mean, that's the thing, it's like,
Sure. Understood.
but
We're-
there seems to be a culture that you don't want to do anything unless there's an app, unless there's something you can do online, unless you can hire a consultant. I think the days of people doing things manually is just like not even in the realm. It's like, what? Manually? No,
Understood.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you reached out to counterparts on the mainland to see how they address this issue?
Yes, ma'am. And through NAME, which you attended 1 year with us, yes, ma'am, we do, and we are anywhere that we can, quite frankly, steal an idea from somebody that's already been doing it, or as you said, some states that are much more advanced than ours, we do, and we work with them to try to come up with solutions. They, however, do not have the same nursing setup that we have, the unique way that we do the nursing in Hawaii, and that fact that they're all consultants right now is very, very unique to Hawaii.
I allow you to steal my idea.
Yes, ma'am.
Then you can ask me anytime.
Yes, ma'am.
So anything else?
Yeah, when are you folks expecting to have a system in place that you can electronically document, move on?
They can't even do overpayments. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to-
Ma'am,
It's anticipated that we will have a system or an add-on to our existing system and have the, and it's, I'm going on a limb giving a date, but it is our goal that we want to resume billing for our existing services that we bill for and additional services by January 2027.
So more than just nursing, you're gonna have
Yes.
the rest.
yes, ma'am.
That is the goal. That does require many internal changes, consultations, and union involvement. Because it does change the complexity of the work of our union members. So we will have to go through that process.
How does it change the work of the union members when it just requires a physician?
It's, the physician's note isn't on them. How they record their services and matching the service to a Medicaid code.
But shouldn't that be part of them, John? I mean,
Well, that's the discussion that we will be having.
How do they do it now? They don't put a code?
They don't need a code to match to they haven't needed a code to match to Medicaid, but they do record, their service provision is in the IEP, and then they do record what they do each session.
But we're not
they don't-
changing their work.
Yeah.
It'll,
The work, it's
Yeah.
just how,
Just
just
document.
documentation.
it's
changes.
documenting it in a medical model rather than the school-based model that they're doing, and it does.
But if they're
I
still doing the
agree,
same
and that's the
work.
conversation we'll have.
But you don't need an approval by the union. You just have a conversation, right?
We'll have a
doesn't-
consultant.
So does
confer.
it mean you're gonna need more employees, more bodies to do it?
We already, for the service, we already have a need for additional bodies.
No, we're
But
talking
no.
about this whole thing with the union, because it
Yeah.
doesn't, the law doesn't say you have to get their approval, right?
Well, we do need to go through consult and confer because we are changing.
But I mean, at the
Right.
end of the day, you can move forward.
But if
because-
it includes adding more bodies, I don't think the unions would mind because they're
No,
gonna be.
Right.
Correct. They
Right.
just said they.
No, she's saying that the bodies were for more services, but for this reporting, it's just because they now have to link it up with the number and so forth, but that should be part of the documentation
It's
that you have to do.
documentation.
It's like now, all of a sudden, you no longer have typewriters, you have a computer, all of a sudden you have to go consult. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, come on, these are things that change on how you report stuff.
Right, but licensure, of course, our related services are licensed.
So are you
But-
contracting
but they
out for
haven't-
those services, or you have people on board for those services? What are you saying when you say you have to?
We have both. We have, it depends on, or differs from service type to service type. Nursing is entirely consulting. Or contracted. We don't have our own.
Okay, so who
providers.
do you have
Everybody
on
else.
board that you have to consult with their documenting in a different
There are
way?
occupation, every other related service has
So
both
what is that?
Department of Education staff and contractors.
So what are you talking about when you say these positions are going to have to document by learning a new code or putting a new code in? But it's
Sure.
the same service that they're documenting, is that not right?
Yes, ma'am. It's just, there's an addition, in order for the medical model, there's a few additional steps that have to take. We have to prove medical necessity. That's the doctor's signature, get a diagnosis and a
So
referral.
you don't do that now for any of your
It's
services?
not required under IDEA, ma'am, except for nursing.
That's not required, but you could have.
Yeah.
You see, the thing is, I think you folks box yourself in by already saying, oh my God, there's gonna be changes, and so now to go, you just say, no, it's not changes, it's just a little technical addition, that's it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like we build
I don't
outfit
disagree
out
with
of a
you.
little molehill. And then, of course, the union's gonna say, yes, you're changing it, therefore we need to, reestablish the position and change
The-
their salary and.
The consultant confer timeline is built into the January 2027. It also gives us time to do the quality assurance.
So I'm just saying that. Anything else before we end now? I said 4 o'clock and it's 4 o'clock. So thank you all
Thank you
very
very
much. It's
much.
been a long day, a lot of information. And hopefully a beginning of us turning the corner on some of the things that we need to be accomplished. We are.